I will now call to order the regular city council meeting of January 22nd, 2024. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person meetings in council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Hiramasa,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo,
Here.
Councilmember Kondo,
Here.
Councilmember Roper,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki,
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Manager Guyer, are there any responses to resident inquiry?
No, not this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? No, I don't think so. All right, we will begin with public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. If you are here to speak about the CCPP Board quorum, the East Lake rezoning, or the Deza Estates local historic designation, you must do so during the public hearings under Agenda Item 11. City Clerk Small, is there anyone signed up to speak to council?
There is one individual, Tom Lampo.
All right, come on up, Tom. Please state your name and address or ward and provide your comments to council.
All right, thank you very much. Tom Lampo, 3951 Jackson Way. So I'm here to pray for the city of Northglenn, but I want to begin tonight by reminding everyone that words matter and choice of words matter. On September 17th, 1787, Elizabeth Willing Powell asked this question of Benjamin Franklin. "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." He knew something. And we have a republic, a constitutional republic to be exact. We just pledged allegiance to the republic, and it matters. Although if you listen to our politicians, our news media, or our educators, more often than not, you hear them say we have a democracy. And there is a big difference. A democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what's for dinner. If there are more of you than there are of me, then you win and I lose. And that's a democracy. The Constitution protects the people. Our governments can't take what the Constitution gives us. Constitutional Republic is supposed to limit our elected officials and protect we the people. That isn't always the case, and maybe our elected officials have bought into the belief that we are a democracy and not a constitutional republic. So words matter. Please know we are a constitutional republic. Mr. Franklin was correct in saying, if you can keep it. I'm choosing to keep it. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' victorious name, you are the God of Northglenn. You already have victory, and we share the victory with you. We are your people, and we are victorious. Those that want to bind us and enslave us have no hope against you. Your word is clear in Proverbs 19:21. Many plans are in a man's heart, but the Lord's decrees will prevail. You want to free people, not slaves to a system that benefits few. Change is near, exposure is near. Keep us strong and patient. Keep us faithful to you. We will remain expectant, and we will need you. We ask for what is stated in Psalm 25, 4-5. Show me your way, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me, for you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. Our hope is in you. Our current situation demands it. We can't sustain the path we are traveling on. There's too many in our society that are left behind. You have a better future for everyone. You have a brighter future for everyone. Your love for humanity is far greater than we acknowledge. In Isaiah 40:31, it states, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Our hope is in you. Help us focus our eyes on you and give us your word so we can sustain the onslaught from our enemy. You have us here at this time in the circumstances that surround us for a reason. We can endure if you will remain with us. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to council? You may press star 6 to unmute yourself at this time. Is there anyone in the audience who did not have a chance to sign up that would like to speak to council? If so, come forward and state your name and address and provide your comments to council.
Hi, my name's Heidi Dater, 12245 Creamery Street. And I wanted to bring to your attention that a couple of weeks ago, we had our second shelter in place at Carl's Farm. I was home at the time. I did not get any notification of the shelter in place. And the only reason that I even knew about it was from being on Facebook. And I had a couple of friends who asked me about it the next day, and they said that it came across their televisions, the emergency alert. But I thought that, I didn't have my TV on, and I had no idea that this was even happening. So that was concerning to me. And the second issue is that I've spoken to a couple of people in the community who have said that when they have had the occasion to call 911, they get bounced back and forth between Northglenn and Thornton because nobody seems to know where Carl's Farm is. And that's really concerning to me as a single woman. If I am alone in my house and someone breaks in and I call 911, I'll be dead by the time these people figure out if it's Thornton or Northglenn who should respond. So that's a really concerning issue for me, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Thank you. All right, we're going to begin with Youth Commission interviews. So if we could have our Youth Commissioner, let's see, the first one, Anusha Kanal. Is that correct? Or correct me on the pronunciation when you come up.
Hi, my name is Anusha Kanal. And, yeah.
Okay, so you are interviewing for the position on our Youth Commission. So if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving.
So I attend Stargate Charter School and I'm in 10th grade, and I just really wanted to speak out about the youth and help out kids that need help, just like me.
Okay. Does council have any questions? Councilmember Kondo.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Canal, for applying. My question is, first of all, I have to applaud you that you're coming forward, because I just remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I had no clue about my city government, anything like that. Not even an inclination to get involved. So, first of all, thank you for doing that. I applaud you for doing that. My question is, and I was reading your response, is you feel like it's really important to get youth engaged. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you would do that.
So I feel like during times right now, like youth is not really heard because we're part of like the younger generation, but as we grow up, we're gonna become the future society. So I feel like ways we can reach out are like through social media or through posters or just any way we can engage the youth into helping our communities.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, thank you so much for applying. I love your thoughts around, because I completely agree that, the Gen Alpha, Gen Z is the future, and so y'all should have a say in what we're doing now because our policies are going to affect that. You're already very active, it seems like, and part of a lot of other groups and commissions, so just wanted to say, like, adding this to your resume, I think, is excellent. And do you think you have time for all of this? I mean, do you also have fun? What do you do for fun also?
For fun, I really like to play volleyball or read or hang out with friends, but this is a really important aspect of my life, and I really feel like I should put it in, like I should fit it into my schedule because it's really important to help our future, like, society grow together.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Canal, thank you for applying. Thank you for being here. In your application, you state you would like to help reduce the stigma around mental health. What is one change, kind of from your perspective, and I guess now I'm asking you to speak on all behalf of young people. What is one change you would like to see that might help to reduce some of the stigma around mental health?
I feel like in society these days, like depression and anxiety is caused by like schooling itself. And I feel like anxiety comes around that. And I would really like to find a change in like things like standardized testing, creating anxiety amongst children. And I feel like changing that would really reduce those effects.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, it's good to see you again. I don't have a lot of questions because I was fortunate to be a part of the Youth Commission's interview when you first interviewed. But I did want to have a follow-up conversation with you about Rep. Wilford's attendance and presentation at the last Youth Commission meeting. And just to get your thoughts on that, like what was the most important takeaway that you had from that? How do you see yourself getting involved with the legislative process and so forth?
I really appreciate her like work with trying to help with kids. Like we were talking about, she was trying to get food banks, like trying to get them more into schools and stuff. I really appreciate that since kids go home like hungry and every day, and she's trying to fix that by like adding food and resources to schooling.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for stepping up and volunteering. I've already seen you interact in the last couple of meetings, and you're going to be fantastic on the commission. Thanks for volunteering your time and doing that. It's a lot of work, and you're
Thank
up
you.
for it.
Thank you. And that is all for all those hard-hitting questions. You did a great job. So congratulations. Thank you for serving with us, and see more of you, and that'll be great. So have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. All right, our next Youth Commission interviewee is Leanne Shee. If Leanne is here, if she could come up, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Youth Commission.
Hi, my name is Leanne Shee, and I'm interested in the Youth Commission because through my lived experiences and representing a multitude of different backgrounds and cultures, I think I can provide a lot of insightful information and real-life experiences that can tailor to the actions that are made towards our youth community.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? There always are, don't worry. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you for coming forward. So in all fairness, I'm going to ask the same question, but with a little bit of a twist. So the previous person talked about generating interest among youth using social media. I was wondering if you could just talk about how you might generate interest within just your school or among your peers.
I would generate interest through education because I feel like most of our problems within our community comes from lack of education and lack of access to it. So I think coming from the youth would be important for us to educate other people, especially coming from people of their own kind. So I think that could be tailored through social media as well as presentations and engaging with the youth in different schools.
Okay, great. You know, this is really truly an anomaly to have a full room. I just want you to know that. Normally, we talk to a bunch of empty chairs. So, you know, I would definitely encourage you as well as Ms. Canal, definitely come to a council meeting and just kind of get a sense of what that's like. And try and think about in your own mind, you know, how do you get young people interested enough to come at 6 o'clock on a Monday? I'm sure they're doing homework or sports. But it would be very helpful, I believe. So really appreciate your willingness to jump in.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. Hi. You had written in your application that something about parks and recreational areas. So I was just wondering if you could just say a little bit about, what you've enjoyed about our Parks and Rec and maybe something you'd like to see improve.
I definitely enjoy just like the community and the people around that. I definitely think that what we should do more is engage more of the community and upholding like different standards and understanding like what it takes to like better everyone and tailor it to inclusivity.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Shi, thank you for being here. I do also want to put a plug that we have a YouTube, so you can check us out on YouTube as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow YouTube. Anyway, you can check us out if you don't want to come on Monday. So you, and again, I'm going to ask you to speak for all youth, have a lot of things competing for your attention as a young person. What is one possible suggestion you have for getting your peers more involved in issues affecting local government?
Yes, I think one thing that would help engage the youth, especially in a time where it's hard to get someone's attention, is I think definitely through social media. And I think like advertisement that isn't so boring and like things that like tailor to like different trends so that it like keeps the attention and understand the like importance of like what is being shared.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, thank you so much for coming and for applying. I see you also have a very full and robust extracurricular life, so thank you again for taking the time. I know Ms. Canal also spoke about mental health among your peers and young people, and it does seem to be, again, a strong priority for you as well.
Yes.
Would you like to speak to that a little bit and sort of like, social media is great for getting the word out, but can also be a plague on young people.
Yeah, definitely like with the mental health stigma around and like personally with like so much stuff going in my life, like I totally understand like where it comes from. And I feel like social media is kind of one of the focal points that it comes out of. So I think sometimes we need to like implement like different like groups of like breaks and like to find different ways to like engage the community in a way and understanding that like not everything has to be online since most of society is online at this point, so I think that's kind of important.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your application, Ms. Shi. I was interested in some of you elaborating on some of the 21st century skills that you'd like to prepare for future challenges to equip the youth, as you mentioned in your application.
Yes, as far as 21st century skills to equip the future generation, I definitely think that that comes with understanding the certain problems that have arrived in our generation that haven't been problems for our past generations, like the rise of technology and like the environment. I think that large education in those areas can help push forth a community where we tailor to everyone and understand the importance of our future generation.
Thank you. That was a great response.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, it's good to see you again as well. I will ask you the same question since I had a chance to be a part of your initial interviews. Just interested in understanding, how you see yourself fitting into the Youth Commission and getting more involved in legislative issues, because that seems to be a direction the Youth Commission is taking, potentially maybe shadowing a day at the Capitol, those sorts of things. So was there anything that stood out? I know you all talked about vaping, mental health, which has come up a few times, including the iMatter program, which there's, interestingly enough, potential legislation coming down the pipeline for that, funding, and food banks. Was there any specific topic that you feel the Youth Commission should pursue more? Is it all? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think one of the main points I want to pursue is definitely vaping and drugs. Because like coming from like different schools, like I've been exposed to those things and I understand like the environment of everything. So I definitely want to like implement like different solutions and proposals that can tailor to those things, since like sometimes like advertising and just education simply isn't the way to just stop vaping in general.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, and thank you so much for applying. You're going to do great.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Welcome on board. We're so happy to have you. So congratulations, and we'll see you at meetings in the future.
All right, thank you so
Have a good
much.
night. All right, our final interview tonight is for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I'd like to invite Trevor Hosterman up to be interviewed for the Ward 2 position on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on this board.
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Trevor Hosterman. It's a pleasure to be here, y'all. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a resident of North Glen for about 5 years now. Lived in Denver previously to that. I spend a lot of my time with my 2 children, my 4 dogs, kind of enjoying all the open space and parks that North Glen has to offer. And on top of that, also take advantage of all the recreational opportunities, whether it's, things going on over here at the rec center, or, Pirate Festival or the Food Cart Festival, a number of things. So, saw the opportunity. I believe in giving back to my community. Been talking to my wife about that for a while. Seemed like a right opportunity to kind of finally throw my hat and, get back involved after COVID kind of shook everything up a couple of years ago. And so just really looking forward to kind of being able to serve my community, be like, hey, kids, check this out. I helped with this, that kind of experience. So just really trying to get involved again and kind of leave a lasting legacy, not only for my family, but for all the other families and individuals in North Glen.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first of all, thank you for throwing your name in the hat for this. And your enthusiasm is palpable, so I really appreciate it. You mentioned that you do visit all our parks. Are you familiar with the Don and Nima Skate Park over at EB Rains?
Right, yep, right over there.
We've had some issues with that, and without trying to paint too much of a picture, obviously there are children there. Possibly those children aren't necessarily surrounded by good role models.
Sure.
And some rough and tumble sort of activity has occurred. I was wondering if you have any preliminary thoughts as you're coming into this position, if you were to kind of think about what would you do about that? Any ideas or proposals that come to mind?
Sure. Obviously without getting into specifics, I tend to kind of approach most situations from a more humanitarian rather than a criminal aspect, for example, depending on what the situations are over there. I do believe in harm reduction, for example, as a means of addressing certain issues, depending on what they are. And so I would probably start from that kind of approach. The last 2 conversations with our, the youth council members focused a lot on mental health. I do believe that mental health advocacy is important, and to not always penalize individuals for, what might be formally a criminal activity, but more of a mental health kind of enabled activity. So I would kind of begin my approach from there. I will speak on, as a parent, when I am over there with my children, I don't usually venture over to the skate park for, reasons. So again, I would probably need more information, but I would approach it from a harm reduction, mental health standpoint, and then kind of, depending on circumstances, evaluate and go from there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, nice
Hey.
to see you. I was on Zoom for parts,
Yeah.
but it's nice to meet you in person. I just want to say thank you so much for stepping up for this role. Very excited. So, really tough question I have for you. Which is your favorite park?
That's a great question. My local haunt is Waco, just because it's a stone throw from my house. But for me personally, I enjoy the Greenway Trail connecting up to Highline Canal. I just ran that yesterday. Enjoyed it. Went all the way out to the Mushroom Farm and back. But yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my favorite, just kind of open spaces to just kind of run through.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey.
Again, thanks for making this application. And I noticed you were also interested in the diversity.
Yes.
And so if you ever have any ideas or you just want to, sit in a meeting, you're welcome to do that.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for applying. Our city needs volunteers like you, and we really appreciate you stepping up to the plate and taking on this responsibility. With that being said, this is your first council meeting, correct?
Correct.
I'm reading your resume, and it says you're looking forward to getting more involved and attending city council meetings.
Yeah.
This is a great one to attend, so you're in the right place. My question for you is just big picture thinking, hypothetical. If there's one thing you can add or that you would love to see in terms of our parks and recreation, like big picture thinking, what would that be?
Big picture thinking.
Big picture thinking. Or small picture thinking.
You know, I think, for me personally, you know, there's a lot that's offered between the different types of parks and then the events that get put on at the parks. I know the website's a great resource, but I know not everyone is always checking the website, so, and not everyone reads the flyers that get sent out. So I think just more visibility would be helpful. You know, not everyone catches the sign on I-25 when they're driving past it, but I think just generally helping with visibility. And then also, you know, when construction projects are going on or, you know, like the aquifer research type stuff that's going on, just kind of being aware of that. So you don't kind of show up someplace and be like, hey, we're gonna go have fun. Oh, okay, you know, that part of the park's off limits, or, you know, they're closed down entirely, or the parking lot's full of construction vehicles, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks again for serving.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So the sad part about going last is that they always ask all the best questions.
Sure.
And so I'm left with thank you. Thank you so much. Your application was very thorough, so we got to learn a little bit about you on paper as well. And I appreciate you coming tonight. So congratulations and welcome on board.
Wonderful, thank you all so much,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into communications. We will start with Ward 1, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hello. So, some quick updates from me. I had Parks and Rec Board as well as Historical Society. Historical Society, I will just kind of let that go because we were discussing that later. But there was also talk around a new member, so very excited about that, as well as strategic plan revision and Sarah's working on some more grant applications with Simsbury. And then from Parks and Rec, obviously we had our Ward 2 applicant speak with us. We did not see any new vendor applications for the winter. It's not super surprising there. And we did discuss too the naming proposal for the Lucille Rubio Rivera Gallery. So that's going to be, we're going to set up time to public to be heard about that. Other than that, we also had our council team building, thank you, which was amazing to go to. We played pickleball. It was really good to sort of like hang out together outside of the dais and in a more normal shaped table. So that was good. And I think that is everything. Thank you.
Councilmember Walker.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Tom Lampo for his wonderful words and his 100% accurate historical reminders. Number 2, Ms. Heidi, thank you for coming and speaking. I too have had that happen with Adams County Dispatch over in the Fox Runs Open Space. And by the time they were done figuring out who was on first and second base, the thread had long passed. Luckily, it was not a significant one, so I'll make sure your voice is heard. And thank you for bringing that forward. Number 3, the CML Policy Committee met on Friday. No major stances were taken as these bills are just getting going. The only update I want to bring to the rest of the council is that the body had some different ideas than the policy committee had on the overdose prevention centers. But since that bill is not likely to go anywhere, I'll keep you updated. But like I said, I don't think it's going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jaramillo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the Northland Arts and Humanities Foundation after holidays party. Wanted to push it to January where not as much stuff's happening as there's always something happening in December, and want to make sure everybody was there. So it was great. So we could set up our art show that we had. It was this Friday, and it was Chalk Gallery. They're located in Denver in the Santa Fe Arts District. So we were able to host their art show at the Parsons Theater, and I recommend you all check it out. It's an awesome exhibit. And I also spoke at that event, and I dedicated the art show to Lucille Rivera, who was a former Chalk executive director, but also she served on the Northland Arts and Humanities Foundation. So I brought her on while I was working for Chalk at the time in 2019, and unfortunately, she, under the circumstances, really what they are is domestic violence, severe domestic violence, and just wanted to bring that up. That's something near and dear to my heart since I really knew Lucille very well, since she was my boss for a time, but she was also a community member. So unfortunately, that's why she's no longer a Northland Arts and Humanities Foundation member. And that's why we're dedicating the art gallery to her. And on a brighter note, we have I had a couple interviews with DICE, future potential DICE members for Ward 2. And they're both bright young ladies that I think that it's going to be tough to pick between the two. I think we might have one more interview after this, but it's going to be tough, you know. So, all right, that's all I have for this couple weeks. Thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a few things. Apologize to everyone that I missed the team building event on the 13th. As you can tell, I've been dealing with something, I don't know. So yeah, that kind of had me laid out. So I'm really sad that I missed that. I was looking forward to building some of these relationships. The good news is, we have a lot of time to work together. I did have the pleasure of attending kind of a joint meeting between NERA and the city staff on the 10th to discuss kind of the survey results from the Washington Point survey that went out. And I want to give a big thank you to Sarah and Allison from Economic Development for kind of leading those discussions. It was a good discussion, you know, as well as the folks from NERA that came. And I look forward to kind of continuing those discussions and seeing what we can kind of collaborate on. As my partner, council member Jaramillo said, we have been conducting the interviews for Ward 2 for the DICE board. I think we do have one more to go. But that's been great, and I appreciate him kind of taking the lead on that. Lastly, I do want to thank Councilmember Lukeman Hiramasa for kind of going, there were a few openings. There was an opening, Cakes by Karen opening. I think she moved. And as well as the Grin Pediatric Dentistry and Orthodontics that I wasn't able to attend because I didn't want to spread my germs. So she was kind enough to attend both those things on behalf of City Council. And I really appreciate you for doing that. Thank you. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, let's see, I was at I guess it was a ribbon cutting for Cakes by Karen, and I just want to welcome them to North Glen, that they were able to stay in North Glen, and I hope everybody will go check out their new location. I did attend a CC4CA policy meeting, and we're just like refining or hashing out our policy statement for the next year. I attended a webinar on Rewiring America, which is a lot of resources for not only cities and governments, but also residents to get either rebates or other kinds of resources if you're interested in electrification. And I also gave some testimony to the Public Utilities Commission on encouraging them to do more about reducing ozone. And then the council team building. And then we also, Councilmember Kondo and I did some DICE board interviews. And I'm just so impressed with residents of North Glen who, we've got so many people really interested in volunteering, and the talented people that we get applying to these boards and commissions are very, very wonderful. I mean, it just goes to show what a great community North Glen is. So that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the team building, I'd like to thank staff. I know that there was a lot of activity going on in background. And I particularly enjoyed the pickleball in terms of feeling general body pain for about a week. Anyway. Couple important things. One, I attended Dr. Cog earlier, middle last week. And we had representatives from the governor's office, DOLA, and OEC come and talk about, I guess you would call it a reincarnation of the land use bill initiative. And I was able to bring some of that information back to staff and debrief with them. So the good news is I think that unlike last year, you know, members of the governor's staff is reaching out to a number of stakeholders as opposed to just kind of waiting till the 11th hour. And so my hope is that the dialogue and interaction that will occur as we go through this legislative session will result in better legislation that's going to make sense. So stay tuned. Also, at that meeting, I was nominated to be board treasurer, and they will vote on that in February. So assuming that is the case, that will be yet another responsibility, and I'm looking forward to that. Finally, tomorrow, I'm going to be participating in Adams District 12's Blueprint Task Force. It's a strategic plan. And certainly I look forward to that. They're looking for, obviously, people that have school children in the district, but also local officials. I don't have any children, but I am a local official. And definitely I'm looking forward to participating in that event. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to piggyback on what a lot of my colleagues have said about the team building event, the retreat for the council, and just thank you to the staff that put on such a wonderful event for us. And it was really so intentional, the planning behind the scavenger hunt and the different stops that we made throughout the city. It was really eye-opening to see the amazing work that crew is doing and how many individuals that the lives that they touch and even the lives that they change here in Northglenn. That was really powerful. And being that we were in the middle of a polar vortex, it made me appreciate so much more the work that they do to keep people safe, warm, and dry. And I'm excited to continue seeing the amazing things that we do.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the team building was lots of fun, and to echo Councilmember Condo's sentiment, I had elbow tendonitis before and after the pickleball. Forget it, I can barely move my elbow. And my daughter was like, "Who are you, Mom, playing pickleball?" But it was so much fun. So thank you to staff. That was an incredibly great retreat, and I just love spending time with all council members outside of our official capacities. In response to the person that stepped forward in public invited to be heard, I just want to make sure that the public understands you can sign up for Code Red. If you haven't signed up for Code Red already, that is an app, and that will help notify you if there are emergencies in your area, maybe quicker than some other things. So if you don't have that, please sign up. On the 9th, I attended my last Youth Commission meeting as the official ex officio. And as you saw tonight, 2 wonderful new commissioners are joining. These kids are just doing great things. They're getting more involved. Rep. Jenny Wilford was their guest speaker. They've had some really great guest speakers, very involved. And hopefully they'll be shadowing Rep. Wilford and maybe Senator Winter at the Capitol soon. So that's something very exciting. A couple of weeks ago, we selected the 3 kids who will be attending the NLC conference. I won't say their names because I'm not sure if they've been notified or not. 5 applied and 3 get to go because of our budget. I wish we could take them all, but I just have to say all 5 were very strong candidates, and I'm super proud of those kids who are taking even more extra time to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with legislators and senators and all of that good stuff. And the topics that were brought up are things that I'll bring up as well at the Blueprint Task Force that Councilmember Condo mentioned. I was also invited to do that, so I will be attending that tomorrow and hopefully being a voice for the youth commissioners as well during that strategic planning. I attended 2 ribbon cuttings, Cakes by Karen. We're so happy they're staying. They're in Hillcrest Plaza, so they didn't move very far. Very nice new facility, and I'm just so happy they stayed. And the second ribbon cutting, I also want to welcome Grin Pediatric Dentistry in Washington Point Square, and they are just an incredible facility for kids. If you have grandkids, kids under the age of 18, state-of-the-art, very colorful, very kid-friendly, and very nice staff and doctors. So welcome to Northglenn. I guess they've been here, but this is their official grand opening. And then last but not least, today we had our legislative committee meeting, and I will not spend a lot of time going in detail because it is still very early on in the legislative session, and so there's still bills out there that are to be determined or, amendments coming forward. So we discussed the usual, same as last time. There's a lot of bills focusing around transit-oriented corridors, strategic growth, ADUs, all of those good things that we know, tobacco legislation and regulation, parking limits. There's a lot coming through the pipeline, so as we find out more, then we will report on more. This Friday, there's also the Colorado Municipal League meeting, and we will get into a little bit more detail on some of those bills this Friday as well, and support, amend, and so forth stances. And that is all I have. Oh, actually, I do have one more announcement for fellow council members. We have our legislative breakfast under the dome with our, at least Representative Wilford, with our legislators. And that is Friday, March 22nd at 7:30 in the morning, so please save the date. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Well, what a wonderful opportunity with so many guests tonight to kind of shape what we're talking about during communications. I know we've had some questions over the years, like what is this about on the agenda? Why are you guys talking about yourselves? But essentially what we're doing is sharing with each other and with our residents the work that we do regionally. Sitting here is something that we are all honored to do and to do the work of the city, but to take that voice out is also very important. So those are all those boards and commissions and extra things that we do as part of this role. And on the consent agenda tonight, we are going to vote on kind of do that typically. And so the fact that we had a council that was willing to spend a Saturday team building, but also really getting to know, as Councilmember Roper said, the work of the city. Crew is doing some fabulous things. And side note, I have some photographic evidence of why my two council members are sore. It's because they are both highly competitive. And man, they went after it. Like if you're gonna tackle that pickleball, then you might be sore the next day. Actually, it was very impressive. It was super fun. But we also spent time revisiting our policies and really setting the groundwork for what we're gonna do for you in the coming years. I attended a bunch of things. Happy New Year. We are all back to business. So CCPP, I was there. I was also at the joint NURA meeting. And I will tell you, Washington Point is a concern for all of us. NURA included all of council, all of our residents, and we're pushing for some really aggressive solutions there, short-term and long-term solutions. And so that was a really productive meeting. Let's see, Mile High Flood District, that's a board I sit on, appointed by the governor, and so I collaborate around flood district items. We had our Metro Mayor's Caucus retreat on Saturday, and that is a very robust day with all of the mayors that are in the metro area. And so the governor attended, Mayor Johnston spoke about the refugees and the homelessness. And our legislators were there talking about the upcoming session. It was a full day of high collaboration, and it was just really inspiring on top of it. And I had my first board meeting for CBCA, the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts, and that's another wonderful connection between the work that we do on council and the North Glen Arts. So quick plug that Black History Month has amazing performances coming up. We are not going to meet again before some of them are out there. So I wanted to make sure that you go to the website and see what performances are available at our theater. And I'm definitely going to be going to see my dance partner from Cleo Parker Robinson. They have a performance at the end of February. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for listening and leaning into that. City Clerk Small, do you have any updates tonight?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not have any reports tonight.
Okay, City Manager Guyer.
A couple timely items for council and the public. If any North Glen resident is interested in participating in the Art on Parade Sculpture Selection Committee on February 6th, please reach out to Michael Stricker at mstricker@northglen.org for details, or you can call the Parks and Recreation Department. You do not have to be an expert in art to be on this committee, just someone who's interested in art. And the Art on Parade is a sculpture on loan program that provides free outdoor public art for our community. So a really fun way to be engaged. The last piece that I'll share with you, the 18th Annual Senior Center Chili Cook-Off will be held this Friday at noon. All area seniors are invited to either enter a chili into the competition or bring a side dish and taste all the entries. My understanding is Councilmember Kondo is one of the judges. Please RSVP at the Senior Center at 303-450-8801. Thank you.
City Attorney Hoffman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I do have one update tonight, and that is on December 4th. Many of you may recall the city of North Glen, along with Arvada, Aurora, Centennial, Wheat Ridge, the town of Morrison and the Colorado Communication and Utilities Alliance, or CCUA, filed a petition with the Colorado PUC regarding street lighting the payment of streetlights on I-25. XL, or Public Service, and CDOT both objected to that petition, and over their objection, the PUC accepted the petition, so the PUC will be addressing on the merits the issue of who is responsible for paying for street lighting on I-25. So that is good news, and we will now be litigating that issue through the PUC about whether the city is responsible for paying for streetlights on I-25, even though it has no ability to, in reality, do anything on I-25, because CDOT maintains it.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo, I see your hand.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have one other item to add. And that was that this past Tuesday, North Metro Fire Rescue District had a joint meeting with the board members and senior executives for Adams County Fire District. And we've been approached by, North Metro Fire Rescue District was approached by Adams County Fire District for a potential merger. So we are in the preliminary discussions and due diligence for possibly bringing those two fire districts together. I believe North Metro Fire has about 125,000 residents. Adams County Fire District has about 80,000. So bringing all that together hopefully will generate some economies for scale. And there's more to be discussed on that. Obviously, this is something that doesn't happen overnight. It's probably going to take about 12 to 15 months, but I wanted to get that out there in the public domain. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. All right, the first public hearing tonight, CB 2014. Will the city clerk read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending Section 4-8-6 of the North Glen Municipal Code regarding the meeting quorum requirement for the Community Co-Production Policing Advisory Board.
I will now open the public hearing on CB 2014. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against CB 2014? It's not the exciting one, so I understand. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak about CB 2014? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. CB 2015, will the city clerk read the title, please?
A bill for a special ordinance rezoning from agriculture to multifamily, certain real property generally located along the south side of East Lake Avenue and west of Claude Court in the city of North Glen, county of Adams, state of Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the city of North Glen.
I will now open the public hearing on the application for the rezoning of the East Lake property from agriculture to multifamily RM-2. The North Glen City Council has jurisdiction to conduct this hearing under the applicable provisions of its Home Rule Charter and Chapters 3 and 11 of the North Glen Municipal Code. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and thus the City Council is acting in its quasi-judicial capacity. The procedure to be followed in this case will be as followed. City staff will give a brief outline of the nature of the application. The applicant may then present any evidence in support of the application. All persons opposed to the application shall then be entitled to present evidence. Any other interested persons shall be entitled to present public comment or evidence. The applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. Council members may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, and the public who testify. All witnesses will be placed under oath by the city clerk and may be cross-examined by any party, counsel for any party, or the members of city council. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the city council or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, before staff gives a brief outline, I'm going to ask City Attorney Hoffman to address the quasi-judicial nature of this proceeding and then confirm the impartiality of the city council as the decision maker.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. As the mayor indicated in her introduction, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. And so part of the process is that council has to consider the evidence it hears tonight, as opposed to information it may have received outside of tonight's public hearing. Specifically, I've been made aware of various email communications and additional attempted ex parte contacts by an individual by the name of Michael Janiga, who may have tried to contact you in addition to sending emails. And there have been other email communications sent to you, both in favor and against. And so to the extent that the emails have been sent, I would ask the city clerk to make those emails part of the record so that the emails that you all received are made part of the record of this proceeding. But also, because of these attempted communications, I'm going to ask each of you individually whether you can affirmatively acknowledge that you're able to act fairly and impartially and have not engaged in any discussions that would compromise your ability to act as an impartial decision maker in this case. So I'm going to actually go around the dais individually to assure that you're able to act fairly and impartially in this case based on all the communications.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So if we received emails that we cannot tell if other people also received them, would you like us to forward them all to the city clerk?
Please.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go around the dais and so Councilmember Walker, are you able to act impartially based on and consider the evidence you hear tonight in entering your decision?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Nowicki, same question.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Goff.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Haramasa.
Yes.
Mayor Lighty.
Yes.
Councilmember Roper.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Kondo.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Unfortunately, I am unable to act impartially on this matter. I have strong feelings about this application, and I recognize that I cannot act as a decision maker on this application, so I'm going to recuse myself. I apologize.
And Councilmember Burns.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will begin. Director of Planning and Development, Brooks jeez. You even sounded it out for me. Svoboda. I'm gonna get it. Will now present the rezoning application to council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, I typically, on most cases, try to be expedient. In this particular instance, I'm going to take some time as we have some new council members who are not familiar with land use entitlements as well as the quasi-judicial process. So I'm going to start out on this particular slide and kind of share a little bit about what the role of staff is with entitlement cases. So generally speaking, we facilitate the application with the applicant. And part of our role is to review the application for compliance and ensure that it meets the minimum standards to bring forward through a public process for the Planning Commission and City Council to consider, depending on the actual type of application. Tonight, both Planning Commission and Council have and will be considering this. The other thing is that we provide recommendations as the subject matter expert to both bodies. And our job is to review the documents in conformity with the requirements as well as the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and the UDO. So that's where we serve in this role. And right now, what we're doing tonight is sharing with you our subject matter expert information. Okay. So what we're doing tonight is considering a rezone from agricultural to mixed use or to multifamily RM2. And we'll get into a little bit of detail as to what RM2 really means. Okay. This request is to establish a change in the zoning of the property. This request does not entertain or discuss an actual development plan. I want to be very clear is that we're not talking about a specific development plan tonight. We're talking about changing the status of the zoning from agricultural to RM2, which is multifamily. So part of our process is we have to do notice. So we've notified the adjacent property owners and we've posted the property, as well as we advertise in the local paper, which is the Thornton Sentinel. All of those things have been verified and certified that they've been done in accordance with our regulations. This is a vicinity map, and I'm gonna try our little laser pointer and see if it works. There we go. Okay, it's right up here in the north part of the city, and we'll get a little bit zoomed in here in a second. This is an aerial map of the property, shaded in red. Adjacent to it is the North Glen Maintenance and Operations Facility. To the south is Carl's Farm Development, and to the north is, in the upper right-hand corner, is the Eastlake N-Line Station. And to the north of that is land in Thornton that is also identified for development. A little bit of the site data here. It's approximately 16.7 acres. It's vacant, and it's zoned agriculture, and it's south of Eastlake Avenue and west of Claude Court. So the area to the south has undergone significant change, as we know, as Carl's Farm. This was previously also vacant farmland and has been redeveloped into the Carl's Farm Plan Development, which we have different types of housing typology as well as commercial. That was approved back in August of 2016. The property formerly known, which is the property we're considering tonight for rezone, is known as Eastlake Reservoir Number 1 and has been decommissioned. And in a few moments, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the history of that. And also, there's a dry drainage channel running through the northwest to the southeast near the southern property line. One thing I do want to talk about with this particular parcel is that this dry drainage channel was part of Thornton's water augmentation system decades ago, in which there was an irrigation ditch that used to feed this reservoir. Also to the west in Thornton, where we know as the Target shopping center and the area surrounding that, the drainage basin actually used to run through this property. However, when that redeveloped, all that drainage was redirected elsewhere and away from this particular property. This property used to be part of a FEMA floodplain and is no longer. So right now, when we say dry drainage channel, it's because it's effectively really only serving the site as it is today, and it is no longer part of an active irrigation water system for Thornton or as a drainage basin for the areas to the west. Okay, surrounding zoning. So what we have here is Carl's Farm. We have multifamily right here, and then the maintenance and operations facility. The one thing I do want to touch on here a little bit is that this whole area to the north is part of a Thornton, what we call stationary master plan. We did one for 112th because that's within our city limit. That was a joint project with Thornton because part of the area also extended out of there. What these stationary master plans are transit-oriented development concepts where we look at how do we maximize the opportunity of having a transit station proximal out a certain distance. Quarter mile, third mile, half mile is typically what these plans look at. So when Thornton did their stationary master plan, they actually did two, they did not include us. They did it on their own. We were a referral agency. We really didn't participate actively with that. We also did for Carl's Farm, we did a master plan process when the Hinkhouse family decided that they wanted to redevelop the property. We included Thornton on that, and I'll expand a little bit of what that looked like when I go over the master plan. But I just kind of want to give you a sense of the surrounding uses and densities that are related to that. The other thing, which was not part of the station area master plan, this is also multifamily, but it's located in Thornton. It's known as Red Hawk. Okay, case analysis. Comprehensive plan consistency. So for the new council members, the comp plan, as we look at it from the planning division, is the playbook in which we go out and try to carry out the city's vision and goals that council has reviewed and considered as part of where they would like to see development, where there are areas of opportunity for change. And so part of that is really looking at that for us to determine whether or not a proposed application like we're considering tonight is consistent with that comprehensive plan. So the comp plan, I also just want to note, was adopted last April of '23. And part of that comp plan was built upon the foundation of the Carl's Farm Master Plan, which was done back in 2016, 2017. So with that, the comprehensive plan consistency here is that this area is identified as TOD with densities between 30 and 40 acres per unit, per acre, excuse me. So the rezoning to RM2 would encourage redevelopment that promotes active streetscapes, walkability, diversification of housing. It's also proximal to the East Lake Station. The rezoning would also encourage the objective outlined in the comp plan, or the master plan for Carl's Farm, which I'm gonna dive into just a little bit here. And feel free to ask any questions along the way. So the plan contemplated approximately 1,200 residential units for the entire area within North Glen. With the Carl's Farm plan development, they basically built 831 residential units. And so that's single-family, detached, attached, and multifamily residential. That includes the senior housing. So the RM2 zoning is consistent with the densities that were contemplated in the plan. We're not necessarily looking to exceed that overall arching density of approximately 1,200 units. One other thing about the master plan that I want to talk about is when we did this exercise, we partnered with the Urban Land Institute, ULI, and we were very strategic about this plan to not just be purely aspirational. We really tried to root this in a market-based approach with community buy-in. So generally speaking, when you look at a master plan or a comp plan update, it's really trying to say, hey, this would be fun if we could do this. But what we took is a step further because we didn't want to create something that just was informational and more aspirational. We really tried to dive into a little bit more of a reality check to make sure that what we were considering was consistent with TOD development, but also with what the market would respond to. That being said, these are still aspirational documents. And these plans communicate what the city council perspective is on how the path of redevelopment could occur in these designated areas. So when we look at the Carl's Farm Master Plan, as I said with the comp plan, it's sort of a playbook. This is also what we communicate to the development community, what the city council and the community's appetite is for change. Oops. Okay. A couple things I want to talk about here on this particular slide. You'll notice that Irma and Race go through in this master plan. That was the feedback that we got from Thornton, that they wanted to see these roads go through. We added that to our planning exercise. We were never really consulted with that through their exercise. We included that. Some of the logic behind that was Race was to serve as the through traffic for the buses coming off 120th, going up to the station, traveling then south down Claude Court to optimize operational efficiencies. When we came to the Thornton staff and we said, hey, we've got a real project here, we're ready to move forward, are you guys still on board to connect these roads? They said, we're not interested. So the impetus in this particular image as to why those roads are showing as connecting was a desire from the city of Thornton to have that connectivity. So this likely will never happen because Thornton doesn't want it to happen. And one of the other aspects to this, which will probably make it prohibitive, is that we designed the roads within the Carl's Farm development to accommodate that traffic. To accommodate through traffic through Carl's Farm, we would likely have to upgrade the design of the roads, the actual asphalt density, as well as improve the intersections at 120th in Race and Irma. All of those things would be a requirement to even consider reconnecting these roads through. So it's very unlikely that that would occur in any instance moving forward. So I want to allay that concern. The other thing I want to point out is that in this purple, we had identified 30 to 60 acres of density. M&O is part of that. Long ago, before we did the Carl's Farm Master Plan, we did a market analysis of redeveloping M&O because it's right next to the station. And we said, opportunity here. Well, throughout the years after this analysis, we basically have no place to relocate M&O. Most of the parcels that we thought about that we could have done at the time either sold or were developed. So with that, this density that we had originally contemplated here in this master plan effectively has gone away because we don't really have that opportunity anymore. The other thing I want to point out is you'll notice on this image that there's a lot of open space that overlaps the East Lake Reservoir property. The way this map in the master plan was intended was not authoritative, but merely as directive of saying, this is what we would like to see. What's actually happened is that the higher density that was contemplated on this plan went here, next to the commercial, and the single family went here. So we still have room for other opportunities within this plan. And if you'll notice here, we actually show some of that other density that Thornton has contemplated in their future area, station area master plan as well. So part of what I also want to mention is that we also have a large park here now as part of this Carl's Farm project as well. Also, I want to mention that before the current applicant held the property, East Lake Reservoir number 1 was owned by Thornton. And part of our conversations when we looked at this project was, what do you guys want to do with this parcel? And their answer was, we don't have a plan. We don't want to participate. We're really not interested in actively engaging in this exercise. It was part of a water district in which it was partially controlled by staff as well as the city council. So it was one of these situations where there was no consensus on whether they really wanted to participate with moving forward and being an active partner on our area planning for the Carl's Farm area. So I just want to also mention that as part of the context here. Okay. Planning Commission and city staff analysis. So this is kind of coming back now to what our analysis was of the application and how it meets the merits of the criteria. So with that, large underutilized property that lacks street activation and walkability, the rezoning is consistent with the significant changes that have occurred in the area, namely Carl's Farm, and it would provide diversification of housing in the area and transitional from the TOD station to the north and the single-family attached and detached properties to the south. And what we mean by that is that this area in Thornton contemplates a very high density, closer to the upper end of the 60 acres per unit potentially, versus what we have with the single family. So this particular RM2 zoning would create that transitional buffer when we think about the overall development of the surrounding area. Okay, the rezoning is also consistent with TOD, because this is within a TOD area. And also there is public facilities are available to service the property. Okay, so these are the development standards, building standards for RM2. And what I want to mention here is that this is the template that the applicant, if this is approved tonight, will have to adhere to when they go through major site plan and subdivision development applications. So part of the message here is that this is what will be the minimum requirements for them moving forward when if this moves forward into formal development applications. So with that, there are additional entitlement steps to this request. This is not the first and last stop. This is actually really the first iteration of what will likely be multiple steps, which I'll go into more in just a minute. Okay, so based on our review, staff recommendation is that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comp plan and the purposes of the UDO. It's consistent with the proposed zoning district, and that there have been significant changes in the intensity of development, largely with Carl's Farm. There are public facilities to serve. In regards to the errors in establishing the current zoning, what we look at is that under the master plan, we identified a higher density for this than what ag currently represents. So that's sort of the nexus of us with our recommendation. One thing I just want to mention on this slide, which is a little bit of a reiteration, is that on what we reference here on pages 2 and 3 are pages 5 and 6 in your packet. and that's the more detailed dive of the actual criteria analysis. So Planning Commission on October 17th reviewed this with a vote of 6-1. The one dissenting vote did not give any public statement as to why they were opposed to the application. And staff is recommending approval of CB 2015 for multifamily on second reading. Also want to mention that we have a provision in our code under section 11-6-4. I won't read all the letters, but it's up there on the board. For protest procedure, originally we had a filing on November 27th. We reviewed the application and found that it did not meet the requirements. It was resubmitted on the 19th, and the resubmittal did meet the requirements. So what the protest procedure means for consideration tonight is that at least 7 affirmative votes are required to approve this application tonight. Generally speaking, in a quasi-judicial process without a protest procedure, you need a simple majority. And I'm almost done. Okay. So here are your options. Council can consider approval, denial, and state reasons that it does not meet the approval criteria, or table request for further consideration. And then also, I just want to mention that, as I said earlier, there are additional steps here. The Planning Commission will take up final site plan and final plat. The City Council would take up the final plat in any development agreement, i.e. a subdivision improvement agreement, that would come before you for approval and consideration. And then lastly, before I get to questions, I do want to note that there are letters of support that are attached to your packet that will also be entered into the record. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions. There is a presentation also by the applicant as well.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Director Svoboda, I just want to rephrase what you talked about regarding Race Street, because I want to make sure I understand what the implications of not having that street in there. I believe what you are saying, and please feel free to correct me if I'm misinterpreting it, is that not having that Race Street throughfare, the design currently of placement of the buildings and the current streets and everything like that should be sufficient to be able to handle the traffic density for what was the intended, I guess you would call it the footprint of the residents and the density of people residing in Carl's Farm. Am I interpreting that correctly? That this rezoning decision is not necessarily going to result in any kind of increased traffic flow or density of traffic?
So the Carl's Farm roadway network as it stands today is designed to accommodate all of the proposed development that is there presently. With respect to this rezoning application, if there is a desire to connect to either Irma or Race and head south, they would have to do, through the major site planning development process, a traffic impact analysis that would determine whether or not their impact could either be absorbed by the existing network or if additional infrastructure improvements would be required to do that. So I will also let the applicant speak to that question in terms of how they may envision their access. At this point, I don't think in our very preliminary conversations that there is an intention to connect to either of those, but they're not necessarily precluded, but they would go through an iterative technical analysis to determine whether or not they could.
Okay, great, thank you. I do have a follow-up. So on page 37 of the packet, specifically the table of allowed uses, and I'm asking this question not only for myself, but hopefully the residents in the room or listening in. When you have a check mark, which it's defined as allowed by right, if you could just provide a definition of what that means exactly?
So use by right, there are several categories in there. There's a use by right. There's a use by right with special conditions. There are special uses, temporary uses that are in there, and there's also administrative approval uses. So if there's a check that says it's use by right, it means it's something that after zoning, they would be enabled to make an application for development. They would still be required to adhere to whatever development standards that we have and/or land use applications such as site development, subdivision, et cetera. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then on that very same table, I wonder if you can help me understand this. there's a line item for park open space. And then you have a differentiation between active and passive. I wonder if you could just help me understand what the difference is between active park open space and passive open space.
So as I understand it, and I'll get clarification after I sit down to verify, to confirm this, but active is like what you have over at EB Rains, that would be active, whereas the Oscar Wilde Nature Preserve would be passive type of open space.
So can I infer then with the check mark on active being checked in there, that means the intent is to develop that area as an active park?
No, it means that it is available as a use by right to be developed if someone were to desire to do that. It does not mean that it is required to be developed that way. It means that it is eligible for that type of use.
Understand, whereas if there's no check, say for example, for park and open space passive, it means it's not.
That's correct.
That's not within the design.
That's correct.
It's not possible.
Correct.
Great, thank you. I do have other questions, but I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Svoboda, sorry. I nail it all the time at home.
I did too.
As soon as you put me on camera, I can't get it. So I have a few questions, and I apologize if you're not the person to ask. Obviously, I'm relatively new at this, so I don't know what I can ask and what I can't. So if you
Go
can
for it.
answer it, please let me know.
Yep.
So why is the applicant requesting this consideration of rezoning for this area now?
I would let the applicant answer that question. I think that would be a great question to ask them.
Okay, and to kind of go back a little bit, the piece about the error that was made, and I think you kind of went through it and kind of brushed over, I zoned out a little bit. Can you go through that again?
So where staff is how staff is looking at the error in zoning is, first off, with the criteria, there is a provision that is it applicable or not. But in this particular instance, what I'm suggesting is that how we looked at it and approached it is that under the master plan, we had identified that this area could potentially have a higher density because it was an opportunity adjacent to the East Lake Station. So for our purposes, in terms of the area of change and things that have happened over time, it was always anticipated within the Carl's Farm master plan that some portion of that could potentially be developed consistent with TOD development because of its proximity to the station.
Okay. And I guess maybe this is similar to that question or kind of answering this. Why was it not kind of rezoned in the first place? Like, I
So
assume-
Thornton owned it, and they were an unwilling participant. So they
Okay,
didn't.
so when Carl's Farm went in, when they went through that process, Thornton still
Thornton
had it?
owned it, yeah.
Okay.
The applicant tonight recently acquired this property, I believe, within the last 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
They can clarify that. But, so they've recently acquired it from Thornton. But when we were working with Thornton, it was, we're not interested.
Can you give me, are there any other examples in the area of agricultural designations?
So right now, the only other area that we have is in section 36. The other area that we had was a 5-acre parcel at 112th and York, which was rezoned recently for residential, multifamily residential, which is at the 112th station, the North Glen station.
Is that the south of 112th
That's correct. It's
Station?
the square south of the station. So that was previously zoned agricultural.
Okay.
We do not have a lot of agricultural or have had a lot of agricultural. The Hinkhouse family was one of the original settlers of the area, and so their agricultural use predated the incorporation of the city.
Okay. I do have a couple other questions, but I'll yield so that others can ask.
Councilmember Kondo, are you back down? All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I recall, I think shortly after being appointed, back in the summer, I believe it was, or fall of 2022, you had an opportunity for a focus group on the comp plan. And I'm just trying to refresh my memory if the Carl's Farm development and all of this, what we're talking about today, was that part of the scope of that discussion?
Yes, in a very general sense, is that we talked about what was happening within the community. We were looking at where the uses and opportunities were. Is Sarah, do you want to come up and
Yeah, I
speak a little bit on
remember
that?
Ms.
Thank you.
Dunsbury being
So Sarah
active in that.
Dusenberry, our senior planner who oversaw the comp plan, will add some more context.
Can you restate the question just so
Yeah,
make sure I understand?
just- You know, it's important, obviously, to have resident input, and I'm just trying to refresh my memory as to whether resident input was being taken back in the summer, fall of 2022, when we were doing the refresh on the comp plan.
Yes, it was. So we did a fairly extensive resident engagement. We didn't necessarily reach out specifically to Carl's Farm residents. We did a lot of citywide mailings, things on social media, and invitation in that form for resident engagement and opportunity. So I wouldn't say there was a specific, say, event with Carl's Farm, but all residents within the city were included within all of our notification and in terms of opportunities in order to take part in the comprehensive plan and provide comment.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know. Thank you for refreshing my memory.
You're good.
And if I recall, it was about the entire city of North Glen, right? Did we cover it at least in some part about Carl's Farm, or what was the future of what was going on the north part of Carl's Farm?
We did not specifically cover that. We looked at the city as a whole.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much. I appreciate you refreshing my memory.
So just to add to Sarah's comment, though, I think one of the things that we did do is we looked at areas of opportunity for change. So we did look at areas throughout the city, and we have in our comp plan a table of where those priorities are, how those fell out with prioritization. I'd also mention that we had a committee that actively participated throughout the entire process that was composed of residents throughout the city in all different wards. Because we really wanted to make sure that we had that diversification. And I would also suggest that for comp plan public engagement, the amount of active participation that we had is substantially higher than what most larger cities would even expect to have. So I'd say we had a fairly robust engagement, keeping in mind that comp plan, from a public standpoint, is not one of the more exciting things that people like to think of or talk about.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate the answers.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Svoboda, my question is, I think I understand that transit-oriented development is, has some requirements that would be more encouraging of people to walk to the train station. So am I right, it would have less parking spaces than maybe a normal, or like a development in some other place?
Actually, Councilmember Goff, that's a great question. We actually have parking reduction bonuses for proximity to TOD, where you can reduce your parking requirement because of your proximity to that. I believe it's a 20 or 25% discount in the parking requirement.
But it's not a requirement, it's just an incentive.
It's a bonus, it's an incentive, yes. So if you're within a TOD area, you can make a petition for reduction in parking with that provision in place.
Okay, so I'm just kind of clarifying in my mind, if this development were to go through, like, maybe it wouldn't be as much traffic because people wouldn't have as many cars, and we're hoping that they're gonna walk the trains.
Correct. So typically with TOD development, now I'm going up to 60,000 feet, not specific to this particular request. With TOD development, what you typically look at is that there's going to be a discount in trip generation because you have the proximity to that. Now, primarily what that looks like is work-related transit, not necessarily going to the store or anything else, but like for entertainment and for work purposes. And as a general rule, what that looks like is anywhere from 15 to 25% in reduction of average daily trips from a household. So when you think about that, the normal single-family household, whether it's multifamily or resident or single-family, is about 10 trips per day. So you're talking about potentially taking, 1.5 to 3.5 trips, or 3 trips off the scale there.
Okay, so then the question to continue this, my thinking about all of this, is who would be responsible for a trail or walkway that goes to the train station? Is that going to be part of the development? Is it Thornton? Is it us?
So what we typically look at is through the development application process, we identify where there's opportunities. We also have the bike ped mobility plan, and we would look to that to see what guidance it has in terms of connectivity associated with the project and whether there's pedestrian opportunities. We've had conversation historically with Thornton, once again, to have a pedestrian connection here on the north, or the northwest corner of Irma, to extend it up and connect to East Lake. those conversations never went anywhere. There may be an opportunity with this particular project, if it were to move forward, to where we could look at connectivity in that regard. But also, we're gonna make sure that there's connectivity moving towards the East Lake Station for certain. But that would be a step further down the road.
And road access to this particular piece of Carl's Farm is all from the south, or is there any potential from Claude at the north, or is it all going down up and down Race and Irma?
So I'll let the applicant speak more directly to that, but I would suggest that in our very preliminary conversations, they have expressed a desire to connect their development to East Lake. They have not, at this point, have expressed anything about connecting to Irma and Race.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to hear from the applicant.
Sorry, I have a
Oh,
few more questions.
That's okay, Councilmember Nowicki.
So I want to speak a little bit to the Carl's Farm Master Plan. Are you familiar with that? Okay. And again, sorry, I don't want
all
to assume
good.
anything. We all get to learn together. Okay. So you would, there's on page, I think 51 of the document that you have, or page 24 of the Carl's Farm Master Plan, there's a little picture here where it shows East Lake. And it kind of shows the development. It even goes beyond, it shows kind of developments, which I assume is kind of the vision for like the Thornton area. But they kind of show a little kind of park area there on the East Lake. So I assume that was kind of put in. I want to speak a little bit to, in the master plan, on page 11, under the section titled Elements the Family Does Not Want to See, it specifically mentions multifamily housing. So is this, does rezoning this, and I know we're speaking now to rezoning and not development, right? So you can stop me if you know where I'm going with this. But does rezoning kind of, are we rezoning with the intention of like we could put that kind of an idea there? Or are we rezoning with the intention that, there's just gonna be 369 more units to meet that kind of 1,200 number in that area? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So somewhat of a philosophical question. I think the purpose of a master plan like the Carl's Farm master plan is to communicate what the expectation is for development. It doesn't necessarily have to strictly adhere to what you see in this plan, as much as it is like, the reason why I brought up this density issue was to kind of give the city council the idea that this is not going beyond what was previously contemplated within this particular plan. And so part of our recommendation for support is because it seems consistent with the underlying density that was originally contemplated. Now, right now, when you look at that view plan, this isn't what happened out there. In fact, part of the challenge that we had pointed out, of course, I jump off the master plan slide because I thought we were getting to the end, so it's gonna take me a second to get back there.
And I appreciate you going back because I
absolutely.
do think
No,
this
this
is
is-
helpful for
yeah.
people to see.
You just gotta time it just right to get the slide to move fast. Okay, so, once again, what we saw here was commercial, and then this mixed use, and then we had this, sort of what we called, medium density, multifamily development here, and then we had high density, multifamily here. What ended up happening is that the high density residential that looked right here ended up coming down here. And that's where we have, the multifamily and the senior housing. So the density kind of moved around. The other thing that moved around with the Carl's Farm development is the open space kind of moved to the middle, instead of being at the top, per se. So once again, this is more or less saying, here are the types of ranges of densities, because if you look on the plan, if you zoom in on it, you can kind of see, it doesn't say 30 units or nothing. It says 5 to 30 units in the brown, it says 30 to 60 in the purple, and it has a mixed use, which has a different connotation and density as well. But the idea is like, this was the concept, and we sort of morphed into something different. And I would also just mention that when we moved forward with this project, It was the Hinkhouse family that hired a broker that brought on the development team that you see out there that's been developed today. And they were in lockstep with the entire programming that was moved forward. So to your question about whether it's consistent or not with the plan, I think from the Hinkhouse perspective, what's out there now was more or less that they were comfortable with because they moved forward with engaging that particular developer.
Okay. On your slide, the slide deck, I think you've given us number 51 has kind of under attachment D, has kind of the Carl's Farm master plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that more kind of in line with what we see out there today?
I think that what I was trying to say with the slide about the overall density here is that it's actually came in less than what we expected.
Okay.
And so I guess the point of this particular slide and the message that I was trying to convey is that there's room from what we had looked at through the master planning process in terms of infrastructure, capacity for, road and traffic and whatnot, as it's particularly related to connecting to 120th. And one thing for the new council members also to point out is that we just widened 120th. About $2.5 million of that was roadway mitigation improvements required by the development that we were able to leverage federal grant money for, because that was a $17 million project when it was all said and done. And without their monies, we would not have been as competitive. So we bundled all of their requirements on 120th into the project, so we have a more cohesive segment. So when we look at those types of things, the Carl's Farm vision was carried through, but that's another situation where when we get to a development application, we do a deeper dive on what's required in terms of mitigation impact. And I think just to reiterate, what we're doing tonight is considering a rezoning. This does not guarantee that whatever they bring forward would necessarily be approved, because they would have to go through a more technical evaluation through our site planning and subdivision process. Just want to reiterate that. Now I'm going to try to quickly go back.
Okay, well, I believe we're ready to hear from the applicant.
It's just this button right here, and then the laser in the red. And there we go. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Mr. Svoboda. Good evening, Mayor, Lady.
Madam Mayor, if we could get everyone sworn in at this point.
Ah, that was great. Sorry, I wasn't quite sure what you guys were deciding over there. So you want to do a mass swearing in? Okay.
Yep.
So if you are interested, so the applicant and anyone who plans to comment,
Yes, so.
our city clerk will take over.
Sorry. So anyone who intends on providing testimony during this public hearing, if you'll please stand and we'll just place everybody under oath at the same time. Perfect. So if you'll all raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're ready to go.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. For the record, my name's Diana Rael. I'm with Norse Design. We're located at 1101 Bannock Street in Denver, Colorado, 80204. Grab this clicker here. Okay. I want to start off by just introducing our team that's available this evening for questions. I think there were a lot of great questions that we heard earlier from Mr. Svoboda that I think we can help clarify some of the questions related to the site, when it was purchased, the intent of traffic circulation, on all those types of things. So from Eastlake Holdings, the landowner is Blake and Ryan Carlson, and they're both here this evening. Our civil survey team is LJA, represented tonight by Tess Hogan. And then along with me at Norse Design is my colleague Elise Applegate. And she was, you'll see her testimony in the Planning Commission record. So she presented at that hearing. Mr. Svoboda did an excellent job of giving you a great context of the site, the history. There is really a lot here. I do want to start off by saying that I'm not unfamiliar with the site. Both myself and Tess Hogan have been working on, we worked on Carl's Farm starting in 2017. We did the preliminary and final PUDs, designed all the streets, the roads, did all the civil engineering, and you name it. So happy to have a lot of residents out there and hopefully loving their community. So we do have a deep understanding of the site, the master plan, and how it ultimately evolved into a community that you see today, which is an award-winning community, by the way, so very proud of that. So the slide here, what I want to talk about in this slide is really something about transition of density. The Carl's Farm plan, as Mr. Svoboda mentioned, really set the groundwork. It was the playbook by which the community was designed over time and how it developed. And again, it didn't develop exactly as was drawn up at that time. Things always change, right? And this site is actually no stranger to that. Thornton owned it forever and ever, and now that's not the case. So if you think about it this way, on the south of Carl's Farm is 120th, and I think Mr. Svoboda just mentioned it was widened to accommodate a lot of the traffic, the background traffic that happens, that was even happening before Carl's Farm developed. And then add Carl's Farm to it, it needed to be widened. So that was a collective project, but that's an arterial road. So, you know, more traffic there, you'd like to start out kind of a transition of land use being commercial mixed use. And that's exactly what is developing there. So on the south of Carl's Farm is commercial mixed use. The next level of land use is apartments and senior housing apartments. So there's a combination of mix of different, you know, types of housing there. And then north of that and directly across the street is single-family detached townhomes and duplexes, as well as single-family attached homes. And I want to note that they are directly across, and in some cases, facing the multifamily to the south. And so imagine now we're transitioning, it's like a reverse bell curve. It's like we're going from a, you know, intense use of commercial multifamily, then we're going into attached housing and single family. And the single family, it's pretty high density. You're not finding your typical 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square foot lots here. It's really the cityscape type lot. It's a pretty small lot. And that was done on purpose to try to push that density to create a good transit adjacent development here at Carl's Farm. And then north of that, there is a detention pond and obviously the property that is known as was East Lake Reservoir site and the Brantner Gulch, you know, drainage area there. So I think, so in context, then to the north of that is 124th, or what's also known as East Lake Avenue. And that in the Carl's Farm master plan was identified as being realigned to intersect with East Lake and Thornton to the west. So I'll show you kind of a graphic of what that road is going to look like. But this site plays a large role in that realignment. And then, so again, you're next to a larger main road. It's only natural then to have more density as you're adjacent to that road to the north. So we've already sort of covered this graphic in quite extent, but you know, what we wanted to do is here, the entire master plan was really a blending of densities overall, a blending of different types of housing that really could coexist together without a fine line of, okay, we're going to stop the multifamily at this location, and then we're going to have, you know, a segment where it transitions to a different type of land use. It was really designed and intentional to be a blending and a very walkable and diverse community in the master plan. And I think if you look at the community today, you'll find that that is the case, and that's how it was intentionally designed. This is a graphic that we actually, you know, we had a city council hearing on the calendar, and we made a continuance on purpose to spend some time. We met with a few of the Carl's Farm residences that were most affected by the property, and we created this graphic to help kind of explain the site. It does say it's 16.7 acres, and you might think, oh my gosh, 16.7 acres at 40 to 60 to the acre. Wow, that sounds like a lot of housing. But in reality, every site is different. Every site is different, but every site also has its share of things that have to kind of chew into the developability of the land. So in this case, what you see on the north, I'll use the pointer here, if it'll work, yep. So this is current 124th East Lake, and you can see it goes north from Claude at this location. The ultimate alignment of East Lake will go right through the site. You can see that the site boundary is the black line here in the perimeter. We're going to be, should the site move forward, it will dedicate that right-of-way for East Lake to be realigned at this location. A couple other things, there is the Brantner Gulch drainage, as I mentioned, will be within an open channel that runs through here. It's kind of the darker color in there. It sort of snakes through the site, and then it'll have a very low-flow channel. There's not a lot of drainage in there, but it'll be carried on the surface when it does flow. So that'll be open. And then south of that, between Carl's Farm boundary and the site, was sort of a remnant, I'd call it a remnant parcel that is very skinny, and, you know, it was virtually, it wouldn't be able to be developed as a RM2 type of use, because it's really like, how would you get a road across the channel? And it's very difficult to develop. So in talking with the residents of Carl's Farm, we decided it would be great to have that as a buffer. We'd keep it open and natural, and then we would be able to add plants and trees and things like that to create a nice, you know, essentially transition from the northern lots and land uses there to this project. This is a detention pond, so, you know, from essentially that whole area would be kind of an open swath of natural area. I'll call it passive open space, I guess, in that case. And then another land use requirement here would be we'd have to have some detention on the site in the low part of the site, so it would be naturally in the southeast corner, probably a detention pond in this location as well. So once the actual site, you know, does and what it needs to do, the site will obviously shrink from a developable standpoint. We don't know what that is yet because it hasn't been designed, but all of those types of details would come forth at the next step. Let's see, make sure I cover everything. So hopefully that, I do want to go back. I think the question was, how will the site be accessed with cars in future, you know, how will that happen? As we talked, Race and Irma will not connect. So, you know, this is the end of Irma. It's a cul-de-sac. There is an opportunity to extend a trail across and be able to get a sidewalk at East Lake to be able to get to the RTD, which is here. M&O remains. There's also a trail system that cuts through from Race at this location and goes over to Claude, and then you can see the trail here. And then Race will not extend either. So all of the access to the site will come off of East Lake Avenue and will be coordinated with Lambertson Farm and the project East Lake TOD that is eventually would be developed in the city of Thornton to the north. So we would coordinate alignment, we would have 2 points of access to meet fire codes and those types of things. All our traffic will go north. Nothing would go south unless it was pedestrian, if there was a desire to have a sidewalk connection. I do want to have Blake Carlson come up for a moment and just introduce himself, tell you all who he is, but my conclusion is that we want to thank staff for all the time and hard work on this project. We agree with the condition of approval, and we're open to any questions you might have after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
I have 2 questions, and I don't know if it's both you or Director Svoboda together answering. So you acquired the property East Lake 1 from Thornton.
That would be Blake Carlson.
Or Blake Carlson.
Yeah, he can come up and speak to it.
Okay, maybe I should hold on that question.
Okay.
But my second question, you mentioned that certain portions, because of that open drainage canal, would have to be passive open space. So now I'm going back to the table on page 57 in the packet, and it does not have a check mark. So passive open space currently is not allowed. So can you Can you tick and tie that together, please?
Sure. So from a site development plan standpoint, this is likely going to be the existing drainage channel that will need to be preserved as a riparian corridor. So whether it would be part of what we would consider the drainage infrastructure per se and stormwater management control. So when we think of passive open space, it's like the Oscar Arnold nature preserve, whereas this is a drainage channel. So it doesn't necessarily, and once again, when we get into the site development, it's a question of each development application has a requirement to provide a certain percentage of area of open space and/or in lieu of opportunity. So we just have to look at that, but primarily to your concern, this would not be counted as passive open space per se.
Okay.
But it would likely be preserved in its state because of what its function and purpose is as stormwater control.
Gotcha. And I would like to just preview my original question so that when you present, you could talk to it. So obviously East Lake One was Thornton, City of Thornton owned land.
Yep.
I'm curious now, with all of this happening, does that become now part of Northglen's,
So
within Northglen's boundary and?
Sure, let me clarify one thing, is that East Lake Reservoir number 1 was owned by Thornton in the city of North Glen city limits.
Gotcha.
Sorry, that may help. They actually had land holdings within our incorporated city limits. So there's no annexation or anything. This is Thornton-owned land within the city limit. They've sold the land to East Lake Partnership. So that's where we're at on that front.
But it is
It's
within Northglen city limits?
It's entirely within the North Glen city limit.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
and in your packet, you'll note that I believe Ashley included the IGA for the realignment of that road, which clearly prescribes how and when that will happen and to what engineered standards will be adhered to as it relates to that alignment. So that also helps me provide some context.
But now that Mr. Carlson has bought that land, now it's the land that is owned by Mr. Carlson within Northglen city limits?
Yep.
Okay. I think I need
Probably
more
should have
coffee.
led with that earlier on. I apologize.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's a great point. I should have mentioned that as well. And I think the key here is that it's a change condition. I think for the longest time, everyone thought, oh, Thornton's just going to own that land forever. But then.
Right.
So.
Check.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Blake?
Good evening. My name is Blake Carlson. I was sworn in, and it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I feel like we're maybe going just a tad bit back. Whoop, hold on, I got a little bit of feedback in my ear here.
Okay.
Going a little bit backwards here. I'm just here to bring mostly the personal side to this application tonight, so maybe I should have started off, we could have clarified how I acquired the property and who I am. But my name is Blake Carlson. You can actually see my family's office, which is, come on, little dot, right here in East Lake, and this is where we met the residents. My grandfather, Lee Carlson, was actually, ironically enough, a dairy farmer who homesteaded on 100th and York. And so our familiarity with dairy and all things farming and ranching goes back many a years. And as another side note, my grandmother was a kindergarten teacher at the old East Lake Elementary when that was in existence, and my grandfather drove the bus. So my history goes back a long time here. My father is Craig Carlson. He's the oldest of 7 because my grandpa needed help milking cows. I am the second oldest of 38 grandchildren, and my oldest son is the second oldest of, I think we're at 67 great-grandchildren now that all live within this North Metro area. So our history and knowledge of this property and all things related to agriculture and real estate go back quite a ways. And in fact, my brother and I, Ryan, who is sitting over here, attribute the fact that we never broke a bone to this day to being raised on Carl's farm dairy milk that was delivered to our home as children. So we're born here. We are products of Adams 12 education all the way through high school, and I went to CSU and Ryan went to DU. We are very proud to own this property. We purchased it in January of 2023. And at that point, we were dealing primarily with Thornton Public Works and Infrastructure. They acquired another parcel from us that they needed for some utility expansion for a water treatment facility, and they didn't have enough funds at the time. And so this parcel was offered up as additional consideration since they didn't have the necessary funds to consummate that transaction. So we had known about this process and this property for quite a while. We had actively watched the Carl's Farm master plan and the Hink House disposal of that property to the Franks, who we know very well, and I believe they also submitted a letter of support for us also. But we had watched it for some time. Also did not know quite what Thornton was gonna do with it. All of our previous inquiries had been about the M&O site, since that was identified pretty clearly. But when Thornton decided that this was gonna be surplus property, we immediately engaged our consultants, Norris and LJA, to start the process. And I believe we submitted in August of this year. And I do want to thank you also, Diana hit on it just a minute ago. The continuation that you afforded us back in December was valuable. The communication that we got back from the residents once we got word of some dissatisfaction was invaluable. The thing that we want to hit on most is it is not in our plan to extend Race Street through our site, if at all possible. I don't believe that would be fair to the Carl's Farm residents there with homes fronting onto Race, and it would be very difficult to get across what will be our ultimate detention pond, probably. This is Carl's Farm's detention pond right here. And so the water would exit the site going to the east, and so we'll probably have one here also. And so I just wanted to point that out also, that is not our desire. We do not, as another point, our property does not go all the way to Irma Street. We stop just short. So that property to our north that is in Thornton kind of wraps around the corner a little bit there. So there is no right-of-way or opportunity to extend Irma, since we don't touch that area. But we would look to make a pedestrian type of crossing to link the area and get everyone focused and progressing towards the TOD site. So I know I've jumped around a little bit there, but our intent is to have this site orient to the north and to that TOD. That is our marker that we're trying to address and we're trying to respond to, is that light rail station in accordance with the master plan. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way, but I'm here and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Kondo?
So I have one other question, and that is that open channel, is that under jurisdiction of Mile High Flood District, or who is responsible for that channel?
That is under consideration right now. There is currently a study that was I think it was commissioned in September of 2022 between Thornton, North Glen, Adams County, and Mile High Flood District. So that is currently undergoing a master plan study right now. And so this area, in terms of what that channelization looks like and the size and scope, is what we're waiting for a response for. We'll have to respond to whatever those recommendations come back as.
Okay, gotcha, and I think Director Svoboda has a few words.
Sure. We are currently evaluating that. As of right now, this particular area was once in a FEMA floodplain, and it's now being removed as a FEMA floodplain designation. So when you think about federal oversight and jurisdiction, that layer has been removed. And as I mentioned earlier, it's because the drainage conditions effectively upstream of it have all changed, and also where the sources of runoff were coming from. So at this point, that would be an issue that we would look at and address through a development application. But part of the consideration tonight is that it's now currently not in a FEMA floodplain.
So follow on, if you remove floodplain designation, that should in theory help make things a little bit better if you reside in that area, and that maybe you're less likely to have flooding.
So I've been doing this for a very long time, and when I first saw the amount of cubic feet per second that was supposed to rip through this property, I was like, where is it coming from? Because it was like over 1,200 CFS, which is a lot of water, and there's nowhere for it to come from because it's all changed since what they call a physical map revision of FEMA firm map. So effectively, we've gone through that process now. And that'll be part of the consideration through a development application.
Okay, gotcha. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand holistically.
I literally used to sit here when we were going through these master plan exercises going, there's no way that there's 1,200 CFS hitting this gulch.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All persons opposed to the rezoning application are entitled to present evidence at this time. If there's anyone on the phone who would like to provide public comment, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Okay. Any other interested persons may now present public comment or evidence on the proposed rezoning. Anyone want to go first? There were a lot of you sworn in.
Good evening, council members. I have additional evidence to offer against this application. Can I bring it forward?
I think so, yeah. Oh, great. Share 'em.
Quasi-judicial requirements, unified development ordinances, information request forms, and goalposts being moved mid-play. It sounds like a game, but it's not. These are the struggles faced by Carl's Farm community for the past 3 months when we learned that something important was to be ripped away from us. In a bizarre kind of way, perhaps there's some unintentional benefit in the way these things work, if you really think about it. With limited time and resources of the city stacked against the many needs and issues raised by the public, how does one separate the superfluous issues from those that matter the most? One approach would be good old-fashioned government bureaucracy. But that's just me being facetious. We, as a community still in its infancy, have navigated these challenges because we believe our cause is just, our cause is important, and that our cause deserves your attention. We believe that the issue at the center of case number Z223 or CB 2015 or whatever the appropriate designation may be is the future of the natural open space wetland environment at East Lake Reservoir number 1. This land is situated directly north of Carl's Farm community, and we believe that it deserves preservation for the benefit of all North Glen residents now and for generations to follow. Ladies and gentlemen, many of Carl's Farm residents moved to this community because we were drawn to the natural beauty and character of this area, a slice of heaven whose history began as a reservoir used many decades ago as part of a larger system of canals for irrigation by the farmers of this region. Since being decommissioned, this reservoir was reclaimed by nature and transformed into a flourishing wetland ecosystem. I can personally attest that in the spring, this area comes to life as a luscious green paradise for countless species of birds and other wildlife. So please, take a moment to imagine and consider a family of wild turkeys walking along the fence line, or night owls hooting in the starry night, red-naped woodpeckers tapping their holes into trees, northern cardinals, tree swallows, blue jays, each doing their things, hummingbees and hummingbirds pollinating flowers throughout, eagles and red foxes hunting for prey. These are but a small percentage of the fauna that inhabit this area of dense cattail reeds and cottonwood trees. Many residents, including I, were assured by our home builder, Richmond American Homes, that this area would remain untouched and were even led to believe that we were purchasing a premium lot for this privilege. It felt like the classic bait and switch coupled with the sinking feeling in my heart when I first got that letter from the city back in October, which indicated the landowner's intent to rezone and develop it into more residential housing. Council members, we are at a critical juncture that will affect the landscape and environment of North Glen. Granted, it is but a tiny sliver of land, a piece of land that some may consider the last untouched frontier of North Glen, a reminder of what this area once looked like. It is a sliver of land that was purchased for only $10, but it is one the people of Carl's Farm community have developed a deep affinity for. To have it destroyed would be like killing the soul of Carl's Farm community. We have worked hard to prove to everyone that we are united. Now, the future is in your hands. Council members, please join us and vote no unanimously on Ordinance CB 2015. And to my dear fellow residents, with that, I leave with you one final thought. President John F. Kennedy once said, "We choose to go to the moon this decade and do the other things that are not easy, but because they are hard." And although this is not a fight to get to the moon, it is a fight regardless, and it has just begun, regardless of tonight's outcome. We must persevere and continue what we have started. We must not cease our efforts until we have secured this place as a designated natural and open space wetland that is recognized and protected by our elected government.
Thank you, sir. Really quickly, I was remiss at the beginning. I want to remind everyone you have 5 minutes to speak. And when you come to the microphone, if you could state your name and address, please.
Michael Janiga, 12391 Farmview Lane.
Thank you
I believe
very
that was
much.
on the paper.
Okay, thank you. All right, would anyone else like to speak?
My name is Heidi Dater, 12245 Creamery Street. Good evening. I would like to express my strong opposition to the rezoning plan of RM2 for the north part of Carl's Farm by Eastlake Land Holdings. I bought my townhome after carefully checking the Carl's Farm master plan, which showed this land is open space. This was one of the main reasons that I chose to live here, and it was really a key selling point for me. I really enjoy the tranquility of our community, the beauty of the land, the old trees along Eastlake Avenue, the natural elements, the birds, the foxes, and the other wildlife that live there. Carl's Farm is already surrounded by high-density housing. We've got 2 apartment complexes to the east. We've got 2 apartment complexes to the west. We have the southern part of Carl's Farm with the senior housing and the townhouses. And I just really would like to see that stay as open space. I mean, it reminds me of that song, Paved Paradise, put up a parking lot. I mean, we just really need to keep that open space for the animals and the birds that live there. I used to live in Thornton, and I moved to North Glen last year. I was really unhappy with the way the Thornton government handled a lot of their issues over the past 15 years. My neighborhood, we had to fight against the city's plan to rezone the land to the west of us in order to build a Walmart. So we were able to fight that, and the Walmart moved across the highway to Westminster. We also had to fight against the Topgolf that they wanted to put right adjacent within 500 feet of our neighborhood. We won both battles. It was really stressful. I wonder, how you would feel, Mayor Leidy, Mr. Walker, and Ms. Burns, if Ward 1 lost the Fox Run open space to high-density housing. Mrs. Roper, how about Ward 4? Would you like to see the Northwest open space or Croak Reservoir replaced by high-density mixed-use housing? I don't think that you would. Mr. Nowicki, you're familiar with this. We're in your ward, and you're familiar with the master plan and what was originally intended. I know that plans change, but when I look at that master plan, where my home physically is, was supposed to be like a big community building and a park. So, I mean, I understand that those things change, but I just think this is a bad choice. You know, I don't want to fight City Hall anymore. It's exhausting. The last 15 years in Thornton taught me that. I do want to work together to benefit the community, and I would just hope that you could help us protect the history of the land and the beauty of Carl's Farm, one of our most precious open spaces. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Zachariah Zielinski. I live at 12380 Irma Drive, basically the very end of Irma at Carl's Farm. First off, before I start talking, I wanted to thank you guys. The questions that you asked today were very insightful, and I appreciate the time you've put into trying to figure out how to form your opinions about this. It shows that you care a lot. I've been a North Glen resident for a few years before moving to Carl's Farm. I really do enjoy living here, and the effort that you guys put into shaping our city as opposed to places like Thornton, although I don't know Thornton that well. It shows you care, and I really appreciate the effort that you put in. Irregardless of that, I am opposed to this application. Generally, sorry, I'm not as strong-spoken or intelligent as a lot of the other people that have spoken here tonight, but when I purchased my house in Carl's Farm, especially speaking with the builder and other residents, there was no mention of development that was going to go into the northern part of Carl's Farm. I don't know if I should have trusted the Richmond sales representative fully, but you know, I am a little bit naive. And when I was looking at the master plan, there was designations for open space, whether or not it's fully respective of how the area is laid out. My main ideas of opposition are that irregardless of rezoning this to RM2, I think that's correct, multifamily, whether or not it means that there's a development plan for that now, it doesn't matter to me as much, since the master plan references an open space or a park. There's already a designation for open space zoning. I really would appreciate council to take that into consideration. When you take a look at the map that we have up there, there is no open space that we have right now. I think we have a garden or two that's maybe a seventh or a sixth of the size of what was originally proposed as to be open space potentially in the master plan. So, yeah, I would just strongly urge council to either postpone or vote no today and come up with a better section of rezoning that reflects the opinions of the residents in the area. That actually brings me to another comment that's kind of adjacent to the vote tonight, but yeah, I mentioned this last time, but the 300 feet or so of notification for a rezoning application, I think, is a little bit light. So I would appreciate if that was brought up as another topic in the future to kind of increase that so that we can have more residents know what's going on where they live. Because I think I also mentioned last time that if I didn't post the notice on Facebook, we wouldn't be here. Bugging the heck out of you guys and making your night go on for 3 hours. I apologize for that, but I do appreciate the effort you're putting in. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. Thank you so much.
Hi there, my name is Justin Carr. I live at 12241 Farmview Street. So, good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm a proud new resident and homeowner at Carl's Farm. I'm here to express my support for the proposed rezoning of the parcel north of our development. The master plan for Carl's Farm was designed with a clear vision: to maximize the development potential offered by our proximity to the Fast Track's East Lake Station. This vision is not just about building homes, but about creating a connected, accessible, and sustainable community. The proposed rezoning and its included trail is a vital component of this vision, enhancing the livability of our neighborhood and promoting a pedestrian-friendly environment. I understand and empathize with the concerns about maintaining open spaces. However, I believe that with thoughtful planning, we can achieve a harmonious balance between development and preserving the natural charm of our area. The integration of this parcel into the larger framework of Carl's Farm could enhance our community's access to public transportation, contribute to alleviating the housing shortage in Colorado, and add to the overall vibrancy of North Glen. As we consider the future of Carl's Farm and its integration within the border of North Glen area, I encourage the council to reflect on the importance of staying true to the visions that guide our community's growth. Approving this rezoning and supporting the development of the trail to the RTD station is not just about adhering to a plan, it's about embracing a vision for a more connected and vibrant community. As someone who is invested in Carl's Farm and plans to be an active member in this community for years to come, I see this as an opportunity to foster a more connected and accessible neighborhood. Thank you for considering the long-term vision and goals of our community in your decision-making process.
Hi, my name is Megan Terrell, and I currently live at 815 Calamia Way in Broomfield, Colorado. And my partner and I here are buying one of the new builds in Carl's Farm, and we are under contract. And yeah, I think it's kind of a bummer that we were not notified at all during our current process of building that they were considering building into it. The salespeople were saying this will remain open space. And since, we're still in the process, we haven't bought the house, we don't own it outright, So yeah, I feel a little bit like it was, like someone was trying to pull a fast one. Like, why wouldn't you want the opinions of the new residents coming in on the matter? Yeah, and I think I also, sitting here today, I was so impressed with the interns coming in, and you guys were talking about like how to relieve some of the mental health struggles. I think nature is like the number one thing we can do. And yeah, unfortunately, everything today seems to have a profit, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to continue their profit on the property. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, I think we need to think about, is it worth it? Because I think the well-being and mental health of the residents and the people around would be better if it remained open space and natural, and yeah, just kind of preserve it for what it is, and we can enjoy the wildlife. I know when we went to go see the home, we saw a hawk come down, and yeah, it was just really special. So I am super bummed to hear that they are considering building on the land. And with that being said, I'm kind of eager to hear what the builder, if they're willing to, give us back our down payment, because I do feel like we were kind of misled. And yeah, so thank you guys so much. I just thought I would give a public opinion of kind of what brought me in tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate it.
I was actually not sworn in, so, okay.
So raise your right hand, please. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lotta Rador. I live on 491 East 134th Avenue in Thornton. I'm a licensed realtor. When Carl's Farm was thought up, the general thought in all of Colorado was that the population would increase by about 20% over the next 10 years. Like huge explosion of people moving to Colorado. Well, then COVID happened and home prices have gone through the roof. We now see more people leave Colorado than come to Colorado. And there's a lot of building going up still. I would just urge you to think about, is there really a need for this development or not? Rental prices are projected to go down. I don't know if it's going to be rental or condos, but just think about, is there a need? And I understand the developer or the landowner wants to make money on it, that's business. The landowner bought it being agricultural. That was a chance he took you know, so be it if he can't develop it. It's my opinion. It is also a very beautiful area. There are lots of turkeys and other kinds of animals there, lots of eagles, hawks, lots of raptors. The light they'll constantly be on in the parking lot will disrupt mating rituals and all kinds of stuff. It's a very big impact on nature. So I just want to caution you, and maybe there is no need for additional development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Rez, 12375 Farmview Lane. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. One, you have a very, very difficult decision ahead of you. No matter what you do, probably like what I'm about to say, you're going to have somebody not happy on either side. I absolutely bought my location for the view. I've really enjoyed being here in North Glen. As a veteran, I'm going to play the heartstrings a little, and I do have a veteran group that I do entertain, and we join. So having that space is certainly great for peace. That said, at the end of the day, if I don't like what happens, I can always move. I did spend many years of my career with the Department of Natural Resources, working with and conducting studies on so many things throughout Colorado. Been here for decades. I absolutely love this state, and we're slowly seeing things chiseled away, but that's progress, right? And also, that's a lot of tax revenue that would be left if you don't make that decision. I understand that as well. My concern is speaking for the animals and the habitat that's there. What I'd really like, if you do support moving forward, and yet there's more layers of what you'd have to approve if you moved forward, which I support you not doing. Again, if I'm not happy, I could always move. But did we do a good study? And I'd love to hear this from, is it Mr. Svoboda and staff? Certainly, you got to trust your staff, and they're professionals and subject matter experts as well as a developer. But have we worked with Parks and Wildlife on how are we going to protect what little habitat is left for some of these potentially endangered and protected species? So very concerned for that, because even if I leave, who's going to be their voice? So I want to share that. And with that, I'm going to try to also make it brief, is, again, very difficult decision ahead of you. No matter what you choose, there's going to be people who are not happy with that. So I do ask my fellow neighbors and developers and on every side of who may be losing in this to have grace with you. Certainly, this is a very close and caring council. I see your passion for your community. So again, a little grace for you, and good luck with whatever you choose. So have a good night. Thank you.
Jim Finnemore, and I didn't swear in either.
Okay. If you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council, staff, residents. Something it is a tough decision to make here. Something that has to be taken into consideration is there is a lot of family history with the folks that did purchase this property. As the gentleman spoke before myself here, there is a lot of tax revenue for the city. We need to take that into consideration for the fact that North Glen is surrounded. They can't expand any further, can't annex anything. I've been around since 1959 in this north area. I'm 67 years old. I've seen a lot of development. I've seen North Glen bankrupt. The city was bankrupt at one time and had its hands tied. As times go on in the days we have now, the animals are important, the wildlife is important, open space is important. But we do live in a society that's deteriorating. City costs are going up by the day, by the minute, by the hour. Losing that tax revenue would be huge for the city. Any development that the city could do to increase its taxes, revenue, which goes right back to the community. It goes into streets, it goes into fire, safety, it goes into the police department, it goes into the city hall, it goes into maintenance of trails, parks, the open spaces that we already have. So that's a huge decision to have to be considering on that. It was mentioned that that property was purchased for $10. I don't buy that. That if that was really evaluated and appraised, I would imagine that property would be millions of dollars. If that property is not able to be, we do live in a free enterprise society, capitalism. Everybody goes to work, they make $1 or $2 or whatever their wages are. The people that invested their money in this, if this property is not able to be developed, who's going to reach into their pockets and reimburse for what that property would be appraised at? And anybody that's in here or listening, if they had an investment into a property such as their houses, which they're already talking about, if someone was to devaluate their property or try to take their property from them or tell them that they're, do something that would make their property worth nothing, they wouldn't appreciate it. So there are personal rights that are involved here. So it's a tough call. But I think in the long run, it would be beneficial to the whole city of North Glen, from the north side to the south side. You guys did a capital improvement project down on Huron, south of 104th. Those projects are not cheap when you got to go in and redo infrastructure such as water, sewer, curb, gutter, streets. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, is there anybody else before, really quick, is there anybody else that would like to provide public comment? Okay. So the applicant can present rebuttal evidence if you would like.
Thank you. I think what I want to do is just take a second to share one of the aspects of the presentation that you did not hear tonight. My brother and I actually went against the advice of one of my consultants in not showing a bunch of photos of the property. And as we've discussed numerous times tonight, one of the biggest challenges that we have in this area is homelessness and mental illness. And I didn't want to show it tonight. I've got multiple photos of the encampments that I've had to deal with. I believe I have had 8 calls just this year since I've owned it to 911 for help in responding through code enforcement in conjunction with Thornton and/or North Glen. And I sympathize with Heidi here because I'll sit on the phone for a while and they'll ask me for an address. And when you try to tell them vacant land, first of all, in North Glen, then they're really lost. But the amount of hours that not only myself, but the landowner to the north, Mr. Lambertson, have spent dealing and cleaning up with the multiple encampments is one thing. The lives that you see impacted by it were something that I don't think anyone should have to see. And it's heart-wrenching. And while I fully agree that there are wildlife that come through this area, every day there are wild turkeys that go through the back of our alley in Eastlake, and they make their way all the way to the Montessori where all my children went to school in Eastlake. And so I understand the wildlife is here and is active. But as recently as, I believe it was the 7th or 8th of January, I was returning home from vacation with my family, and I had Allison at the city call me and tell me to please get to the property quickly because fire had been dispatched to the property, and there was an encampment that had lit fire to some of the dead cottonwoods, and it took what I'm understanding is a little over 2 to 3 hours to put it out. And I'm just so thankful that it happened when we had some moisture on the ground and no wind. And I don't want to use it to my advantage using their place in life and where they're at right now. But the homeless encampments that I've forced out of here that will simply just relocate to another part of the property within hours or days is just, it's a big problem that I got to figure out how to deal with it. And so I just want to bring that to light, that while it is a gorgeous property, which is why I purchased it, it certainly comes with a lot of issues that I'm struggling getting a handle on. Not in January, but in December, we also tried to remove a homeless encampment, but we were told by, at this point, Thornton Code not to approach this particular gentleman due to some mental health issues that he has, that he's extremely unstable. And so it's just, my point is, it's a scary situation. And the owner to the north, Mr. Lambert, can speak to it also. It is his little white home right up there, just south of 124th, right there. And at that same January timeframe, they had a forced entry that's on camera. Doors were being kicked in, 2 individuals with masks on. And I just say all this because there's a lot more to this site. It is a gorgeous site, and there is wildlife here. I'm not diminishing that. But there's also a huge amount of struggles with the cottonwoods that have completely hollowed out and died right now. That is just so much kindling that I've got to figure out how to get the property cleaned up and as quickly as I can because it's becoming a real issue. So I just wanted to address that also, that there, I do have photos, but I'm not going to share them with you because I don't think that should be used to my gain. And it's just something that I understand I own this property, and I'll continue to try to deal with it through the best avenues possible that are available through Northland as well as Thornton, because it gets confusing here. They don't rely on the boundaries either, so getting the right jurisdiction or agency to respond has been somewhat challenging. So I wanted to say that. The other thing that I wanted to make note of, because I heard it a couple different times here, I do a number of transactions and have through my 28 years of land, real estate and land development here. One of my first calls that I made when I bought it was to Richmond Homes and Meritage Homes to let them know of my acquisition of this site, and to make sure at that point that they had communicated their salespeople that this was owned by development, that they would show those master plans. That's as much as I can do, is try to make them aware. Hindsight, I probably should have posted numerous places throughout there with signs, but I did not do that. At that time, there were still no residents here. I believe Michael and some of these other persons who directly back up to my lot maybe purchased as recently as April or thereafter. So I did my best to try to notify those who are selling the homes to disseminate that information, and whether they did or not, I can't speak to. So those are my 2 responses right now. But if you have a chance, I mean, ask the residents. I did respond back to all of the neighbors that attended the meeting that I did host in December, and asked them if they were okay, if they see anything going on back here, to please call me. I'm trying to stay on top of it to the best that I can, but it is a daunting situation to be dealing with, not only for myself, but for code enforcement, for police, as well as for Mr. Lambertson, the owner to the north. So thank you very much.
Okay, so before we close the public hearing, does council have any other questions? Oh, hi. I did not see you pop up. Hello.
I need to be sworn.
He needs to be sworn in. Can he do that now, or was that?
Yes, Mr. Carlson might have an additional opportunity for rebuttal.
Okay.
Okay. So if there is right hand, is the testimony you're about to give, do you swear that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Glenn Lambertson. I've just been mentioned. And I live in that little white, used to live in that, I spent 45 years living in that little white house. I no longer live there, but I do own the property that to the north. And my contract for sale is going on 5 years now. Probably will not close because the city of Thornton doesn't have water. But I hear the talk about the beauty of East Lake number 1. It's not near as beautiful as it used to be when it was an irrigation reservoir with water. The plants on it are not particularly pretty. They're weeds. A lot of them are thorny weeds. No one uses it because it doesn't even have access. The comments about wildlife are true. In my 83 years of observing wildlife there, it changes a lot. There's more there now than when there was a farming community, because farmers didn't like wildlife. And it will be diminished. When my property develops, it'll be almost fatal. The coyotes don't come around now as much as they used to, but now a couple of fox do because coyotes don't like foxes. But the main are the red-tailed hawks and the owls and the raccoons. No one seems to mention the raccoons for some reason. It is sad. I don't know that in a metro community expanding at the rate that this is, that there's what you do about it. The people of East Lake got real upset when developers came around them because it changed the community. You can't stop it. Maybe part of this could be an open space. It certainly has how they do the channel would be very important. And maybe at the western end, who knows? But I support the project and thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to rebuttal?
I second his support. No rebuttal to that. Thank you.
Anyone else before I move ahead? Okay, does council have any questions? Yes, all right, Councilmember Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Mr. Carlson. I don't want to do that. Thank you. Hi, thank you. Sorry for my brief absence, but I was following along on my phone. So I hear your concern about the unhoused living there. And it is tragic, and I understand that property values and housing prices are greatly impacting that. So am I hearing then that you want to be part of the solution in creating low-income housing or anything like that for the space?
What you're hearing is that I'm dealing with this problem every day and I don't have an answer to it. Like, I think everyone these days, I'm interested to hearing more about it, but housing is an issue for multiple people, and I'm seeing it every day.
Yeah. And I think I understand, like, if this is a rezoning for multifamily housing, correct?
RM2, and that, yeah, it has a designation for a certain density in the city code, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have a few questions for our city attorney. And I appreciate, by the way, all the feedback provided, both for and against. My question for Attorney Hoffman is the city obligated to warrant or guarantee promises made by or benefits advocated by third-party developers?
No, sir.
the city obliged to ensure developers are speaking truth when it comes to some of the things they might be using in their advertising to promote properties that they are selling?
No, and the job of the council tonight is to consider the evidence you heard this evening.
That's a great answer, because I'd like to go to page 77 in the packet, which says approval criteria. So there's 5 criteria. And what you're telling me, Attorney Hoffman, is that our decision tonight needs to be based off of answering these 5 questions.
Yes, sir.
So the one question, and I'm not sure if it's you or if it's Director Svoboda, but I'd like to understand what the meaning is on bullet point number 3, when it says the intensity of development in the new zoning district is not expected to create significantly adverse impacts, plural, to surrounding properties or the neighborhood. If either of you can speak to that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. I think of all the criteria that we have to consider, that one has a degree of subjectivity to it. Part of the staff presentation tonight was to sort of identify from an impact standpoint at a very high level, because we don't know exactly what's happening, is the consistency of the zoning classification as it relates to what was originally contemplated in the master plan as far as an overall density allowance. And so when I think about how to interpret that requirement as it applies to this case tonight, is we have a master plan that said, hey, we have this amount of capacity for density. And when we looked at that, we looked at road, water, sewer, mitigation impacts, things of that nature, to take into account in our evaluation of our recommendation. So once again, this is potentially one of the more subjective criteria that the council has the discretion to evaluate. But from a staff perspective, what we were trying to communicate is this is within the expectations and the vision and the goal that was originally contemplated within the master plan exercise.
Madam Mayor, may I ask one last question? So criteria number 5, there was an error in establishing the current zoning. Is that applicable or not applicable in this case?
What I was representing in my presentation tonight is that because of the amount of change that's occurred south of this area, as well as what was identified in the master plan, that's where we believe that you can take a position that there was an error in this zoning, because this is agricultural zone land, and that we've identified this as essentially as an area of change.
So what you're saying is that we here, as we deliberate, we need to look at all 5 criteria?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Would you mind putting that slide back up?
Page 77.
This slide?
The criteria.
The 5 bullets.
I thought I was gonna get through it quick. I thought I was gonna get away with it. All right. Coming back.
Yes. And so I also had a question about that.
There you go.
I feel like, would it have been more clear, or is it more clear for us to make all of those questions? Because written as statements, I was a little confused. So number 1, is the proposed rezoning consistent with, does that make sense, or am I reading that wrong?
You are reading it correctly.
Okay. Councilmember Nowicki?
Yeah, and while you're up there, Mr. Svoboda, I think I can direct this. A resident, I believe it was, and stop me if I'm wrong here, Zachariah Zielinski mentioned something about open space zoning. Is there a special kind of, so we're talking about kind of rezoning, and would there be, is there a designation where you can rezone it to agricultural? Would you have to designate a special space for like open space zoning?
So what would happen, I think to where you're going with your line of question is, under the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, there is a zoning classification called open space that the property owner could make a petition and submit an application to the city to rezone it from its current land use zoning classification to open space. Within the development process for major site plan development and subdivision, we also have public dedication requirements, which can include open space dedication. And in the Carl's Farm situation, they provided pocket parks and then a bigger park within the development itself as part of meeting that requirement. So there's two aspects to that. There is, yes, you can generally just go in and rezone a property to open space, and then through development, there's generally a requirement for some type of open space consideration.
Councilmember Connell.
Thank you for your patience, Madam Mayor.
You said one final question.
You just said something that was very interesting.
See, I say something and it just opens the door. All right.
So let's just hypothetically say we want to designate this as open space, and that Mr. Carlson is willing and applies and does that. Who then has the responsibility for making sure that, you know, the weeds are mowed down and people that are homeless are not starting fires and stuff like that? How does that, can we play that forward, please?
Sure. So there's two scenarios. There is, hey, I own this land and I want a designated open space, and I'm going to retain ownership of that parcel as open space. There is another consideration where a property owner could say, hey, I don't want to own this anymore. I want to give it to the city under the condition that it's rezoned to open space. So there's a couple different ways to do that. Back in the mid-90s, there was this big trend for conservation easements, which was providing tax relief for large development parcels to try to create some tax abatement relief as a strategy for redevelopment or for greenfield development. So there's a bunch of different ways that slices.
Okay, great, thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Walker.
Thank you. Attorney Hoffman, you're probably going to shut me down here because I'm going to put the cart before the horse, but let's say this does get rezoned. We do have the say in what can go in there. So if we're let's say maybe we're not satisfied with the amount of open space that's in there, the amount of parks, we can shut it down at that point, correct? I just want to clarify on that.
The city council will have some authority. Planning commission also has some authority. So if you look at the slide from, in your packet on next steps, planning commission is actually the final reviewing body for development plans. As to final plats, council approves is the final approving authority for those because you also approve the public improvement obligations associated with those final plats. So it's a little of both.
Okay, I just want a clarification on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe I saw Director Peterson in the audience. Am I allowed to ask her a question?
I think she left.
Okay. My question was, I believe I sit on the liaison of the Parks and Rec Board, and I believe we had a presentation about the amount of parks and open space in our North Glen boundaries compared to population versus other cities, and I just would have loved to have heard that number because I don't remember it. If we are average or below average, or I can't remember.
I guess the only thing I would throw out there, Councilmember Burns, is that the relative nature of the question as it relates to the criteria that we're considering tonight.
Good point. Thank you. Just thoughts, you know?
Yep, understood.
Do not see any more hands. And so just for process, there could be more deliberation in the vote during the ordinance reading after we close the public hearing?
There can, but not questions related to the evidence. So this is the time for questions related to the evidence.
Councilmember Nowicki.
First of all, thank you everyone for coming and speaking, sitting through city council meetings. Not terribly exciting, but you all did it, so I appreciate that. With regard to kind of evidence, and this is a kind of a question directed at Attorney Hoffman here. Obviously, we've kind of got some evidence here. What constitutes kind of evidence that might be opposed? We've received kind of this and kind of additional emails. Can you talk a little bit about what that kind of might look like?
Absolutely. So your job tonight is to take everything you've received, for and against, and apply it to the approval criteria. So to the extent you heard evidence opposed and you find it compelling, it has to be applied to the approval criteria.
And that's those 5.
Correct. So it is the applicant's obligation to attempt to check the boxes as to why the 5 approval criteria apply to warrant a rezoning. And what you heard from staff is their recommendation that they believe that the applicant satisfied those 5 criteria. But it is up to you to consider that evidence and the evidence submitted in opposition. Again, apply it to those criteria and make your determination.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Well,
Councilmember Goff?
It just occurs to me, because we had, I'd asked something along about this particular topic at our last meeting. If this gets approved tonight, that's a big if, and then, let's say, next couple of meetings or next meeting, we decide to change some of the requirements for development, like, I'm just theorizing. Would that apply to this property, or wouldn't, because we've approved it now?
It's a good question. As to the rezoning, it would be done. If hypothetically in the future, council were to consider amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance that changed requirements related to site planning, requirements related to plating, those might apply. It's going to depend on the nature of the change. But as to zoning, it would be done, and the criteria that are set forth in the rezoning would be applied to this property.
All right, it just occurred to me that trying to think of, I don't know, compromise solutions in my head.
And part of the kind of policies, the overarching policy issues with going forward on development is you always want to make sure that your engineering is current. So oftentimes, requirements change related to changes in what would be considered current engineering. But as to the densities, those would be set.
Any other questions?
Sorry, one more.
Councilmember Nowicki?
With regard to kind of deliberation, now obviously a judge can retreat to their quarters and kind of deliberate. What does that look like with regard to a city council?
So ultimately, you will be deliberating when when the ordinance on second reading is presented a little later on the agenda. So the 8 of you will discuss amongst yourselves and then ultimately make a decision.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will close. Oh, it's like someone's standing at the microphone. I want to make sure I close the right one. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing on CB 2015. Okay, our third public hearing tonight, CB 2016. Will the city clerk read the title, please?
A bill for a special ordinance designating certain real property in the city known as the Deza Estates as a local historic district and amending the city's zoning map to reflect the same.
I will now open the public hearing on the application to designate property known as the Deza Estates as a local historic district in the city of North Glen. The North Glen City Council has jurisdiction to conduct the hearing under the applicable provision of its Home Rule Charter and Chapters 3 and 11 of the North Glen Municipal Code. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and thus the City Council is acting in its quasi-judicial capacity. The procedure to be followed in this case will be as follows. City staff will present information on the application, including evidence and support. All persons opposed to the application shall then be entitled to present evidence. Any other interested parties shall be entitled to present public comment or evidence. The applicant may then present any rebuttal. Council members may ask questions of staff as the applicant and the public who testify. All witnesses will be placed under oath by the city clerk and may be cross-examined by any party, counsel for any party, or members of the city council. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the city council or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay. Senior Planner Sarah Dusenberry will now present the application to council. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so as mentioned, we're gonna be talking about Des Estates local historic designation. So the purpose tonight is to consider the designation of the Des Estates neighborhood as a local historic district. First, I'm gonna go quickly into kind of the different types of designation. We have brought you guys Des Estates for a national designation, so I just wanna make sure that clear distinction between the two. So the first is with the national designation, otherwise known as being listed on the National Register of Historic Places, is there to celebrate and recognize historically significant properties, districts, places within the country. It does have limited regulatory powers in terms of protecting those properties, and it has practically nothing. It only protects if projects are utilizing federal funds. Common things are like highway widenings that may affect properties. It does provide for financial benefits. There are statewide and federal tax credits, as well as, this is specific to Colorado, but residents are open to the opportunity of grants through the state as well. There we go, okay. For the local designation, does the same thing. It recognizes those historically significant areas, but it's more specific to the city. There are things that may be locally designated but don't rise to national level. So it's a tool for local governments to use to celebrate their built history. It does have regulatory power to protect those properties, to kind of, especially in terms of districts, it's maintaining the character of the district as a whole. And it primarily does this through what's called an alteration certificate, which will review any exterior modifications that are visible from the public right-of-way. This is because historic districts do provide not only benefit for those living there, but they are a public good in terms of providing an area where residents of the entire city can see their built history, can understand. Des Estates specifically was actually the first neighborhood in what is now known as North Glen. So it is a does provide that overall good of protecting the city's history for not just the residents that live there, but all residents in the city. It also does provide the financial benefits. This is again specific to Colorado. I think in terms of preservation, we're a bit lucky in terms of allowing for the use of the state tax credits and grant funds. With this also being on the National Register, they already have access to those, but in the future for anything that's not on the National Register, local designation provides these opportunities. Going in more specific for DESA, the proposed district is 29 properties. Those that are green are considered contributing, meaning they were built within the period of significance and still have integrity, meaning they look similar to how it was built initially. They may have alterations, but as long as they aren't deteriorating from that integrity. So essentially, if someone lived there first and they can go and look at that house and kind of say, this was my house. That is a very simplified way of explaining integrity. And then the red ones, as I said, are non-contributing, which just means they've either been altered too much or they were built outside that period of significance. So the general location, it is south of 104th, just west of Huron Street. It's primarily along West 99th and then portions of Rapp Lane, Palmer Lane, and Lunsford Lane. It is currently zoned RS2. That zoning will not change with the designation. The designation will be added to the zoning map, but the underlying zoning still is there. It's about 15.5 acres, as I said, 29 properties. The city does have a requirement that we meet 51% written consent. We did receive that with 15 of the 29 properties. And this is just the kind of requirements for notification. In terms of analysis, just giving a little background. So the city conducted an architectural and historical resource survey in 2021, which provided kind of history and an understanding of those properties, which ones could be included within a district, which ones may not. It did recommend that local designation of 29 properties, as well as the recommendation for the National Register nomination, which can actually have a little bit of an update. It was approved at the end of November of 2023, and I believe Councilmember Burns has already let y'all know. And so With that, technically the city is the applicant. The HPC decided to move forward with that application using the National Register nomination draft as the primary component for that application, which is used to exemplify why it's significant, does it have integrity, et cetera. We did do a fair amount of public engagement. We really want to make this as resident included as possible, since this is a specific change just to this neighborhood. So we want to make sure our residents are involved along the way. We attended 4 community meetings in the spring and summer of last year, which helped to inform the residents of kind of what this process is, as well as what are the outcomes of the designation, as well as a way for us to kind of communicate and start to receive that property owner consent. We informed our residents of these meetings through direct mailed letters. We also included a letter with the designation information and a further request for that consent. We used just a form stack form, kind of a simple online consent. And one thing to note here with the engagement, and one reason why we did such extensive, our requirement of a 51% written consent is above and beyond the majority of districts that I've looked at. Our state, the State Historic Preservation Office, provides a model code. They have no requirement for consent for historic districts. Many communities around have no requirement or have a 10-day kind of waiting period where you can provide written non-consent, which is how the National Register does it. So we did want to make sure that we did take that effort to make sure that before we brought an application forward, we had that level of consent. Looking at the kind of history and significance, the why behind the district, the fun part, it is looking at architectural style. So it's the modern movement style, more colloquially known as mid-century modern. And they are custom-built houses, which I'll get into this a little bit later, was rare for the time. They, as much as mid-century modern did, the horizontality was a key of it. The pronounced eaves, flat roofs. The siding was specific to resident needs. That custom aspect allowed them to take advantage of the views of the mountains as well as the city. It's situated on a hill, so it really, and was out here initially by itself, so it really took advantage of those views and really leaned on the idea of indoor-outdoor living, having kind of a seamless movement. You'll see in a couple pictures, very large windows and leading onto balconies and decks and things of that nature. And one thing is the neighborhood did not include sidewalks or streetlights. It still does not today. It did at one point in time have a horse stable. That unfortunately no longer exists. But it is some of that kind of planning and early development is still in retention. The other kind of significance, I kind of touched on this, was that shift as it being post-war housing, with the period of significance being between 1956 and 58. This is really in that kind of post-war suburban growth kind of boom. That the country was really supporting through different forms of housing loan programs, et cetera. This is a departure from that. It is all custom built. They had a single model home, but it was more of a, this is what you could kind of get, but you can have even more customization. It was intended to be about 160 houses. Due to the financing strategies and kind of this departure, which makes it significant, also kind of led a little bit to its incomplete status. So about 160 houses were supposed to be built, and what's remaining today is about that 20. And those are the really concentrated that were built by Swanson between 1956 and 1958. These are just a few pictures, kind of the historic pictures. You can see that top left, fairly open, the horizontality, the windows leading into the deck, and then just kind of an interior, very 60s vibe. And these are new pictures from today, showing kind of how some of these houses still have not massively altered, showing kind of the view of Denver and then modern interior as well. So for the recommendation, the approval criteria is noted in 1695. All properties that are considered contributing are 50+ years old, being within that 56 to 58 timeframe. You are required to meet one of the criteria. We do meet 3 of them, being that it's associated with architectural heritage. It portrays a specific distinctive architectural style, and due to that kind of departure in the design ethos, it looks at kind of elements of architectural design and innovation. Staff did provide kind of a more thorough analysis within the packet that was previously presented to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the request and public hearing on November 14th. They voted unanimously to approve it. We did have some public comment there, both primarily questions, some concern, which is fairly common. But staff does recommend approval of CB 2016 for designating Des Estates as a local historic district. Council options is to approve, deny, or table moving forward. For the next steps, if it is approved, the zoning map would be amended to note that it is a historic district. And any property modifications, especially, again, those that are visible from the public right-of-way, would require that alteration certificate. We do have it in our code that we have both an administrative and a process that goes to the Historic Preservation Commission. Majority of home alterations are relatively small, so we wanted to make this process not too onerous or too many extra steps. So your smaller kind of changes, simple changes in materials, fences, those can be removed, likely go to staff. Your larger additions, new construction, things that could have much more of an impact on the neighborhood as a whole would go to the Historic Preservation Commission and a public hearing. The HPC will also be working with residents to develop design guidelines. These are not the regulatory side of things. There is criteria within the code that we would review the properties against, but the design guidelines provide a kind of that guidance for what is most appropriate for the area, what is what residents have deemed kind of what they find the most important. And this is one thing that is a little bit of departure from what people think of normally as historic preservation districts. We do want to include residents from the get-go on those design guidelines, understanding what they find most important about that character. One example could be that horizontality, those views. That is, they definitely still have them. So maybe additions going vertical, not so much. Horizontal additions, maybe there is a relative kind of guidance where we can go with that might accommodate, because this is not to stunt the neighborhood, keep it frozen in place. We want that growth and that evolution to still continue, but within the character of the historic district, saving that kind of story to tell. And questions?
Questions for Sarah? Councilmember Noe.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. I saw that there were a few non-contributing properties in there. Would they still be, if this goes through or if we approve it, would they be still, I'm sorry, would that still be, they still be considered part of the historic district?
Yes, so how that works is they're considered part of it as that they can impact the character, but they are held to a much less standard since they aren't considered significant. So they are we're looking at things, when it comes to non-contributing, it's primarily if they're gonna demolish it, what else is gonna go there? So we wanna review that. If there is a major addition, is it gonna be something that is popping the top that could take away from the character? So those things do apply, but they generally are held at a lesser standard just because they are already not meeting that level of significance. So they are still under review, but it is generally an easier process.
And I guess, does this kind of designation open funding for residents who might want to update or kind of make modifications? Is there any kind of grant programs available?
Yes, so through the state and federal government, there is income tax credits. Primarily, it'll be the tax credits from the state that would apply here because the feds do have a requirement of income producing. But if it's a rental property, that's considered income producing. And what it is a 25% income tax credit on eligible costs of construction. They do have to meet the requirements in terms of keeping it historic, keeping it within character. But yes, and those can be used for the exterior and interior of the house. And then the state has, through their state historical fund, a grant program that the city can kind of support, essentially kind of apply for a resident in order to receive grant funds as well. So those are options. If it is an income-producing property, they can also use the federal tax credits and layer those on top of each other.
Any other questions for Sarah? Okay. All right. Do we have anybody who would like to provide public comment? Would you like to be sworn in to share? Yeah. If you would like to be sworn in to provide public comment, just stand up and our city clerk will swear you in all at the same time. All right. Do you also want to, sir? You can do it all at the same time. There you go.
Okay, so if you'll all raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, got it.
All persons opposed to the rezoning application are entitled to present evidence at this time. If there's anyone on the phone who would like to provide public comment, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Pretty quiet out. Any other interested persons may now present public comment. Again, you have 5 minutes per speaker. Just state your name and address before you begin.
Hello. My name is Lauren Weatherly. I live at 1160 West 99th Avenue in Desert Estates. So I speak to you tonight as a homeowner and as a community member. I'm also a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, so full disclosure, I do hold that perspective as well. My husband and I moved to North Glen in 2011, specifically because of the house. We saw it, we fell in love with it, and that was it. We really didn't know anything about North Glen, it was the house. So we moved in and we knew that the neighborhood and the homes were special. We knew there was a story. And as we began to get to know our neighbors, everybody kind of said similar things. Like, yeah, it's really special. We love our house. We know there's a story, but we don't know what it is. So we're like, okay, it'll emerge. So fast forward a few years, I joined the Historic Preservation Commission. I've always loved history. I studied it in college, and that was a conversation I felt I could contribute to in the community. It wasn't because of where I lived, but in fact, my love of history was one of the reasons why I fell in love with the house. So the commission has many projects, but one that previously existed prior to my arrival was to figure out the story of Desert Estates. So of course I got involved in that project. Over the next few years, working with the commission and the city planning department, we began to uncover bits and pieces of the story, culminating in a historic survey and the extensive nomination that was included in your packet, which provides an incredible amount of context that has been unearthed in recent years. And this really provoked the beginnings of the conversations about what it could mean to designate Desert Estates a historic district. So over the last few years, as we, and I say we, meaning the commission, in partnership with the planning department, and also we, my neighbors, and I have been thinking about, talking about, and working on the potential for local designation of Desert Estates. And what I found really special is the community that has been built and strengthened as a result of these conversations. There have been home tours, partnerships with Denver Modernism Week and other local organizations in the Denver metro area, formal and informal neighborhood gatherings, text chains about how to deal with our 70-year-old plumbing, or roofing companies that might know how to handle our roofs, as well as book clubs, watching each other's kids and pets, things like that. And it reminds me of some of the stories told to me by some of the early residents that I've had the opportunity to talk to, like in the 50s, when in the middle of the winter there was nothing around except farmland, and the septic system froze at the bottom of the hill. All the residents were out at 2 a.m., with boiling pots of water, working on that stuff together. And so it's been really special to sort of watch that community sort of like redevelop in a way like around this historic preservation conversation, because today, like, we live in a more populated space, but also in a time and societal place where neighborhood community is not necessarily guaranteed. So for us, historic preservation conversation has had this wonderful side effect. Neighbors getting to support each other. So I think this local designation would be a conductor for the community to continue to develop, because current residents would all have that opportunity to participate in whatever next steps are to come. As I've talked with neighbors, many neighbors over the years, some valid concerns have come up. And I want to expand on a couple of those really quick, because I want to talk about why I've come to believe that this step would actually provide more support than anything else. So one concern is that local designation would add a burdensome level of oversight to the neighborhood. There would be oversight, as Sarah mentioned, but I have really come to believe that it wouldn't be burdensome because that oversight would be developed through a process of community conversation and dialogue, and as Sarah mentioned, really thinking together with neighbors and with residents about what we want to see in the neighborhood. So the benefit is that it would enable the Historic Preservation Commission to develop resources and supports for folks who want to alter their homes or who just need help maintaining their historic homes because they're a handful, honestly. A few years back, I toured a mid-century modern neighborhood in Denver that commissioned some design guidelines, kind of similar project. And the tour guide on this walking tour pointed out examples of homes that had been altered, expanded, et cetera, in ways that served the owner's needs and maintained the historic integrity of the neighborhood. Many of them you couldn't even really see, because of the perspective, you couldn't really even see the additions from the street. And I think it was a beautiful example of what I think we could achieve here. So I just want to say, all this to say that I support you all in voting to approve this local historic designation. I do it as a resident who is proud to live in the home that I live in, to live in the community that I live in. I want to honor the historic stories and integrity. I want to honor the Perry family, who is the original family that built our house, and all of their neighbors back in the 50s. And I want to continue to work and build community with neighbors and also support the Commission's future efforts to develop resources focused on supporting all of the residents in this neighborhood. I think this is great for Desert Estates and the city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who's next? Hi.
Hi, my name is Nico Andresen, and I live at 980 West 99th Avenue. My fiance and I bought our house a little over a year ago, and similar to Lauren, the home is what brought us here. We're absolutely in love with the architecture and really wanted to live in a mid-century modern house. And when we were first looking at the house, we heard about the possibility of a historic designation, and we were a little hesitant. But as we learned more and learned that it's not so much a heavy-handed HOA type situation, but really a way to bring the residents together and design, how we want to keep the neighborhoods historic and how we want to preserve it. And I mean, these houses really are a lot. I do a lot of the work myself. I've jacked up my roof and replaced a beam. They're a lot to take care of. They're 70 years old, nearly. And having a little extra help to keep them going would be really phenomenal. And they truly are unique. None of the houses have any specific thing in common beyond the design language. Like the woodwork is so custom, and it's all very unique and beautiful. And yeah, I would urge you to pass this because we really love the architecture, and we love the neighborhood, and also actually like the community that's in this neighborhood is like nothing I've experienced. I've hardly spoken to neighbors anywhere that I've lived before, and now like we have dinners, we have book clubs, we have gatherings, we help each other out fix our houses. My neighbor helped me replace this beam and helped me fix my plumbing when we first moved in, and found a lot of issues that we weren't aware of. But it's really worth it. All the work is worth it, and we'd like to keep them standing for a long time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? My name is Bartley Porter. I'm currently living at 11225 Franklin Street in North Glen. I also have a condo over by Waterworld. It's just outside the North Glen. But I think I'd like to start out by establishing myself as an original North Glen resident. And in the pictures on the wall, I saw the house that my parents bought in 1955. My parents were the first ones to move in Desia Estates. I was 3 years old. And I think by the time I finish all my remarks, I would really like to establish that Desia Estates really could be the feather in the hat in North Glen, because it really is a special place. And there was a contractor, Art Swanson, went to the CU Architecture School. He said he wanted to build some houses. He acquired some plans for these California-style houses that had flat roofs, multiple patios, quarter acre to half acre lots. They had lots of windows, flat roofs, all carports, no garages. There was 27 original houses. One house, if you recognize the name Niver, there was a school, Niver Creek. That house was raised, it was full of black mold. They rebuilt that one. There was 2 more houses to the east of that one, but there was 27 original ones. 3 more were added after the original 27 houses. One of them was moved off of 84th and went north on Huron all the way down, and that's a brick home there. A few houses down from there is a cinder block home that was built, and I call that like a new style California house. And next to that one is another house that's a brick house, a lot like the Bowman house with the red brick in that neighborhood. Mr. Bowman was on the Adams County School Board. He was a pretty big wheel. And I grew up with his kids, and I knew them all. As a matter of fact, a lot of these names with the prior thing, I went to school with a lot of those kids. I was in a horse club with a lot of them. We kept our ponies, our first 2, right out the back of the house. And eventually more of the people in the neighborhood bought horses and joined the club. But there's a lot of real well-known names that were, I collaborated with in this club. And this local designation would be really good. It would actually produce, collaboration with people, and it would maybe come up with some architects for people to get together and enlarge their house, but without doing anything to really take away that original footprint of the neighborhood, which is what's really special about the neighborhood. If you haven't driven through there, if you drive through, you'll see all the carports that were converted to garages. There's a few people that want to convert it back to carports. And also, that same neighborhood hit the front page of the Denver Post in 1964. A tornado hit, and it danced around the neighborhood. It took our carport, picked it up, threw it over on the cars, went down across the street and down one house. Our neighbor heard glass breaking. He put on his bathrobe. He went out in the living room. He looked up and saw the stars. It took his whole roof and put it in the backyard. Then it danced around the neighborhood and did minor damage around the rest of the neighborhood. And But that hit the front page of the Denver Post, and it had the entire picture page. When the Denver Post used to have a picture page, so.
Sir, can
I
I
re-
get you to wrap up your comments for me?
Pardon?
Can I get you to wrap up your comments for me?
Sure.
Okay,
I think that'll wrap it up.
okay, thank you.
I want to thank you for the time, for all of you, because, you've had some very hearty discussion with the prior situation, and I wish y'all well on that, so,
Thank you for coming and sharing the
Yes.
stories.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to council? Okay. So this one, the city, see, how does that work for rebuttal? I don't think we have any rebuttal on this one. I think we can close the public hearing. Okay, so I will close the public hearing on CB 2016. All right, moving into ordinances on second reading. The first one, CB 2014. Will the city clerk please read the title?
A bill for an ordinance amending section 4-8-6 of the North Glen Municipal Code regarding the meeting quorum requirement for the Community Co-Production Policing Advisory Board.
Move for approval.
Second.
City Clerk Small, do you want to just remind us what this one's about? I will do. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll give you a brief update because of the time tonight. So staff is presenting CB 2014 on second reading, which would amend the quorum requirement for the CCPP Advisory Board. Back in 2022, when the board's membership was reduced from 13 members to 11 members, the quorum requirement was not adjusted at that time. So the board has proposed what is written in the ordinance before you, and that states that a quorum shall consist of a majority of the voting members of the board, excluding vacant seats. So the board currently has 8 positions filled. Therefore, if this ordinance was adopted, their quorum requirement would be 5 members. If they had all 11 positions filled, the quorum requirement would be 6 members. As a reminder, other boards who have a quorum requirement that consider vacant positions include City Council, the Historic Preservation Commission, and the Planning Commission. So the CCPP Advisory Board unanimously recommended that council adopt an ordinance that would require the board's quorum to be a majority of the filled positions, and CB 2014 was drafted to reflect that. Staff also recommends approval of CB 2014, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'm listening to the scenario. Currently, if there's 8 filled seats, there's a possibility of a tie. Or you're saying a quorum would be 5 of 8.
Well,
I just wanted to make sure I heard that
the
correctly.
quorum would be 5 members. would
5
be-
of 8.
Right, so
Okay.
there'd be 5 present, could possibly be more.
So that means if they're making a decision on something, they're going to have to get to 5. If they end up 4-4, what happens in that particular, and I'm, maybe my,
Typically, a
maybe the
tie
attorney can.
fails, so,
Tie fails.
correct.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
All right, seeing and no further questions, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CB 2014 on second reading passes unanimously.
All right, CB 2015. Will the city clerk please read the title?
A bill for a special ordinance rezoning from agriculture to multifamily, certain real property generally located along the south side of East Lake Avenue and west of Claude Court in the city of North Glen, county of Adams, state of Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the city of North Glen.
Move for approval.
Second.
Council received a presentation on the application during the public hearing. I'm opening this up for discussion. Councilmember Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I figured I would just kick us off here at the end. Yeah, I mean, I dressed as a judge tonight to keep myself in that state of mind. And I think with the evidence presented, it's a yes. But the thing that is sort of I'm keeping in the back of my mind is that they then have to present what they're planning. And we can say no, planning commission can say no, come back with something different. You know, at least, you know, hearing everyone's statements, I was listening while I was excused. I hear everyone's, and thank you to everyone who came and spoke. I really appreciate it. It is late, and yes, I feel it. It is, we can't speak to what people were promised from a realtor. That's not what we're discussing tonight. And I eagerly await to see what Mr. Carlson and co. is planning for that space, specifically bringing up issues like the unhoused. We're going to talk about it. Let's talk about it. If it's an issue, let's try and fix it through this space as well. That is where I am at.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think Councilmember Burns expresses how I think about this issue as well. I really do appreciate everybody that came forth, and especially Mr. Lamberton. I just couldn't help but think about Dr. Seuss and the Lorax. And of course, I know that several other people spoke, and I thought about that very same thing as well. You know, it's so important to protect our natural spaces, not only just for our own mental health or providing a space for us to de-stress, but also in consideration of the wildlife, the fauna and flora. So I get that. Unfortunately, I also think about this as I look at this issue, right? It's a philosophical discussion on one hand, and on the other hand, it's a parochial decision. And I feel like my obligation and my duty here, sitting in this chair right now, is to make a parochial decision based on the criteria. So I do appreciate everything that was presented and said here today. And obviously, what I took into account was everything that was presented in this session. And I weighed it against all of the 5 criteria, up or down, to make sure that we had the check in my mind, that I'm convinced that I could check the block and say yes to all 5 of those line items. And at this point, I am able to do that. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Goff?
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure if we were just going to go down the line. And again, I want to thank everybody who came and spoke. Nobody wants to give up green space. I mean, it's a tragedy that we're losing it. But I think, as we've heard from some other of the testimony, that things change over time. And just trying to weigh the pros and cons, I don't see a way to vote against this at this point, but I do think that we will be looking at any plans, if a developer comes forward and wants to do something with this property, with whatever the limitations of it, that we have at that point some power to make sure that there's enough buffer. I mean, what I remember when this first came forward with the Carl's Farm development, and that the plan, that the little booklet that was put together, that we have a copy of. I don't know who else has seen it. And that area at one point was actually going to be part of the just the whole part of the Carl's Farm planning, with the expectation, I guess, that we would have bought it from Thornton at that time, and then there would have been more of a park up in that area, and then more development of housing below that. But then Thornton didn't go along with us, so that's one reason why the plans changed. I think we're just going to have to, do what we can with the situation that we have, and it is a tough decision. It's not an easy one, so I guess I'm with Councilmember Burns.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everyone who came and stayed. It's now 9:30, so, thank you for coming and spending your Monday night with us. I think we got a lot of good insight and feedback from everyone. Very passionate. It's good to see that people care about their community, especially a young community like Carl's Farm. I've been a North Glen resident for 4 years now. I live across the street from Carl's Farm down Claude Court. So it's nice to see the residents kind of engaged already in what's important here. I think I've been asked, this journey is kind of taking a different role, right? I've been asked to sit in the place of kind of evaluating the evidence, evaluating what the city put forth, what residents kind of put forth, and to kind of be impartial, right? To take what I may believe about, some of those philosophical things that Councilmember Kondo referred to, some of those, and kind of put that on the back burner and just kind of evaluate the evidence. I do intend to vote yes to proceed forward with redesignation. And in doing that, I recognize that takes that space that will have an impact on wildlife. I am not turning a blind eye to that. I understand that will impact wildlife, that will, take away some of the pristine nature of that beauty. I'm, like the other council members, I'm curious and optimistic about what may go in there. I do think it holds a unique position in that it can kind of connect us to the station there. And I've heard, when I was campaigning, I heard from some residents about wanting walkability so that they can get to that station. So I'm intrigued by kind of what we can do there. I also recognize, on some level that we face a housing crisis, and I'm, again, very curious and kind of judicious, excited to work with the rest of the council in a judicious manner to evaluate what would go there, right? So that it kind of is in line with the space, is in line for the vision of the city, and what was kind of originally intention there. Thank you, everyone.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will echo everything that my fellow council members have said. Thank you, everybody that stood up and provided testimony, and to give us an understanding of your home, your community, what it means to you. And yes, in this position, we do have to look at things impartially. We do have to follow the criteria that we are given, and that's what we have to base our judgments off of. But it still deserves that you all know that we understand that this is your home, your community, and that you love it and you want to protect it. I think that's worth mentioning, at the very least. I do hope that, any future development does take into consideration any protection of wildlife, and, so may be it, or whatever natural areas may be preserved. As fellow council members have said, that this will come forward. This is not this end, this stop, so to say, that any future plans will come forward to council, and that's another opportunity for us to take a look at future development and what that will look like. So with that being said, according to the criteria, I am also going to vote yes. But I also want to say that I do, as philosophically has been mentioned, I do understand where you're all coming from. If it were up to me, I would still love to have horses in backyards, as they were talked about before. It used to be agricultural, and that area and that designation is no longer what it is. So for the good of the city, we do need to look at rezoning. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anybody else before I chime in? Couple of things. I agree with my colleagues, but there were a couple of things that stood out to me through this process. Again, the passion and the love of community is awesome. I think it is really important to distinguish the two roles through this process. So, normally we're really leaning in a different way, and this is a different process for us. And when we have to look at the criteria in such a way, I think, I've totally appreciated the strategy name and place, right? I heard my name and my neighborhood in the comments, and I was like, yes, but that was a planned development with trails and parks as it began, and this is different. This isn't a usable space right now. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what can be developed to make that connection and to, I did hear a lot of green space, not as much as there is currently, but it's not going to be completely wiped for a parking lot. So, and we will revisit that as we go through this process. The one thing I heard, though, I really want to encourage everyone who came out tonight to pay attention and engage with your legislators, because the forecast in the state right now is really shifting. The state laws and the impact to all of our communities, and hearing all of that passion. I love that you're here, but if you're not engaged with your state legislator, that's a missing piece. So I encourage you to lean in, listen, hear about what they're talking about in this session right now. Last year was really heavy with a lot of the land use pieces. And you need to make sure that your voice is heard a little broader. I think it's really, really important. So I wanted to make sure I got that plug in tonight. But I will also be voting yes. I don't see any other hands, so I am going to ask us to open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CB 2015 passes 8-0 with one abstention by Councilmember Jaramillo.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to CB 2016. Will the city clerk please read the title?
A bill for a special ordinance designating certain real property in the city known as the Desert Estates as a local historic district and amending the city's zoning map to reflect the same.
Great. Oh, move for approval? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Council received a presentation on the application during the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'll just kick this off real quick here. It's late. The team worked really hard on this. I heard the passion from the community. If there's one thing tonight has showed me is that Northglenn does care about their community, their neighbors, their residents, which I am very thankful for. Also just a point of note, I think we talked about this last time. If this goes through, this will be only the second mid-century modern historical designation in the state. So pretty exciting. And just hearing y'all's passion and commitment is beautiful. I'm just gonna, it's just very beautiful. That's it. And I'll be voting yes.
I'm going to jump in with a question that was really sort of haunting me as you spoke, is when is the next tour? When can we schedule another just, home tour experience? Because that was really, it was lovely. Your home is lovely, but just to experience the neighborhood firsthand, I think if we can work, I would love to see that happen again, so.
Great way to celebrate.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I think that's what we do. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really just want to reflect, that it's really nice to hear some of these stories about, I'm not terribly familiar with this area, but it's nice to hear some of the history and that it's connecting to kind of the next generation as well. I was reflecting on, I just moved into my house and just, it's a house, but for you all, it's something more and something special. And I think that's important, so kind of voting yes to designate this space to really be considerate of that. But, ready for a tour whenever it's available.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm definitely in for a tour. Thank you so much, Lauren, the Weatherlys, for everything you've done. I think it's so incredible to hear how just this project and this designation has brought the community together, and something that's lacking in a lot of, communities and neighborhoods. So of course, it's Ward 4, so I'm extra excited for that since it's in a Councilmember Roper and I's ward, and it's just beautiful. So I'm very excited for this, and, hopefully it will help with any of the residents that need extra help, fixing up their homes and whatnot, and getting those tax credits, which I think is important. And then hopefully you'll never sell it, but if you do, I'm sure the value will be, that much more, which is, a legacy for your family and for your kids, and on and on and on. So I wish I had bought a home there, but I love where I live as well, so thank you. That's it.
All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CB 2016 on second reading passes unanimously.
All right, thank you for being here. Okay, moving into resolution CR 12. Will the city clerk read the title, please?
A resolution approving addendum number 1 to the professional services agreement between the City of North Glen and Roxall Consulting Group Incorporated for construction management services for the 120th Avenue Corridor Improvements Project.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Director of Public Works, Kent Kisselman, is here to provide a summary of the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This will be brief. 120th project, so Roxall, they were our quality assurance. And, we still are ongoing with the project, even though we're mostly done. There's still some landscaping to be done in the spring. We're still doing all the paperwork through CDOT, so there's still things that they're doing. And there was a little bit of delays in the project. And then when they initially provided their quote, that was back in like 2021. And so some of their rates raised during the thing. So they've done a fantastic job for us. Obviously, the project is, amazing. And they're asking for an additional $80,524.61. And staff recommends approval as presented.
Any questions for Kent? No?
Oh, sorry, I have a
Great.
few.
Please open the vote.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
I'm way behind here.
Councilmember Nowicki has a question.
So in looking through some of this information, it mentioned kind of the slab failure that occurred.
That's not this project.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're on the next.
Okay,
It's the next one.
all right, my bad. Well then, yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
So we're good. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CR 12 passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, discussion item, new City Hall construction update. In January 2024, Senior Planner Eric Enzi is here to provide a summary. And the winning chair.
Yes, this is the winning chair. So just to start off with, I want to thank you all for coming at 5:30 or whenever you could to sample the chairs. The consensus was this chair, so we will be moving forward with that chair. If you want one last opportunity to sit in it before you leave, just to make sure, we can do that after the meeting. Otherwise, we'll be moving forward with ordering this chair. But anyways, just to continue, we are proceeding. As you can see, lots goes on constantly on the construction site. We are still, I am happy to say, we're still on time and under budget. So that's looking good for the overall project here. The structure of the building has been fully completed now, obviously. FCI, who is, for our newer council members, FCI is our general contractor who's heading the construction out there, has been working currently on both interior and exterior framing. Actually, where we're at now, as you can see, the sheathing has gone up on virtually all of the building now. They're working on kind of some weatherproofing of the sheathing itself at the moment. So you'll see a bright blue building for a little period of time before they're able to start putting the materials on the outside, the exterior materials. We are anticipating seeing framing of windows and installation of windows very shortly here in February. What that will do is create a space inside where they can start doing all the finishing touches on the interior. The curb and gutter's also been installed on the south access drive, which is known as North Glen Way. So that has been poured with a single lift of asphalt at this point. It is going to be still closed throughout the duration of construction. Unfortunately, we cannot open that. But it is being used as parking, so there is a use, parking and some staging of construction equipment. So we shouldn't see too much more over at the old rec center parking lot in terms of that staging. For planning purposes on your schedules, we will be working on another tour for council members. We're hoping sometime in April, March, April-ish, as some of the interiors start to take shape. That way you all can see it. I know there are a couple council members who haven't seen it at all yet. So if you would like, I'm happy to schedule a time for you guys to see that now, just so you can see the construction as it is now, and then you can see the phase as we move forward. So just reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to do that for you. We are currently still looking for a late summer, early fall completion of construction, with the grand opening ceremony around that time as well. And then I will close this by saying we are still continuing to monitor the slab failure. As many of you are aware, and two council members probably aren't so much aware, back in September, there was a situation where the structural floor collapsed on the void form underneath. And it was as a result of moisture due to a very large rain event that we had during that period of time. So with that being said, our project team, which consists of some of the leadership team, are still working with FCI and their insurers to resolve what's going on here. We hope to have some more information next month to be able to give you. I know we're expecting any day now to hear from their insurers about what that looks like. So I should know more next month. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you might have.
I have a nexus to my question, and it's a fast one. When are we demoing the old rec center?
Oh, that's a great question. We are anticipating the demo to happen within the next couple weeks. The building actually, you can see there's a large piece of construction material or construction tractor out front. That's what's going to be used to demo the building. They are still working on finalizing some finishing sign off on the asbestos abatement with the state. But we anticipate that's going to be done here within a matter of days. And the American Demolition is on board to begin the demo immediately after that. So as we know, I'll send out a blast email to council just so that you all are aware of exactly what that day is. But we anticipate that to be within the next couple weeks.
Do I have to get a special license to drive the tractor?
I'll let Corey handle that one.
I don't know, but I'm going to say yes.
I bet I could do it fast. Okay. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. So my question has to do with the art and the artist.
Sure.
I mean, is there any way we're going to get some kind of an update or photos? And then I also want to say to the new council members that we did get an invitation to go to her studio to see, and I have not done that yet. If anybody, I don't know if we could schedule as a group to go, or if anybody else is interested in it, maybe we can, something could be. Yeah, so I just wondering, yeah.
No, what I can do, I haven't seen any revised. I know she's in the process of fabrication at this point, so now might be a good time to get some pictures at least for you all to share if you aren't able to go down there. But if you are interested, I think we can go ahead and work with Michael Stricker and Jody Bliss to get a tour of her space. Now, I do think, if I'm not mistaken, I think her space is down in Monument, which is on the way to Colorado Springs. But so it would be a little road trip.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm thinking.
Councilmember Kondo.
4 rapid-fire questions. First questions, any mishaps or injuries of significance?
Not of significance, no.
Okay. Secondly, as the site gets near completion, security. I've seen a lot of graffiti and theft and things like that. I want to make sure that the site, as it nears completion, that we have sufficient security to make sure nothing happens. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we do hope that we have sufficient security. There are cameras up that are 24-hour cameras on the facility. We also have installed some cameras along Memorial Parkway, which we will hope will get that side of the building as well. But, so we do have the site under surveillance.
Very good. Regarding the rec center, are we still trying to create a window for North Metro Fire Rescue District to do some training?
Unfortunately, due to the delays associated with the asbestos abatement, we just don't have, unfortunately, the luxury at this point. I have reached out to North Metro, and we'll try to coordinate, and they are interested in some training in this facility once this facility is done. So we'll work with them to try to get them into this particular facility.
You're saying they want to train in the new city hall?
No, this.
They would do some training in the old building before this building
Gotcha,
comes down.
gotcha. This
Yes.
facility, where we're
Yes.
at. Last question, will the seat have adjustable arm height thingies?
The answer is yes. There is an option on this one for adjustable arms, so we are going to include that on this chair.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm done.
So when you said there's been graffiti and theft, there has been?
Not at the construction site. I've seen graffiti and all kinds of other nasty things.
Where? Oh, in other places. Okay, I just wanted to, yeah, I wanted to clarify that. Yes, there's graffiti in the world. Are you talking? Is there?
I'm just concerned
Okay,
that
I just wanted to make sure you hadn't seen
as
something.
value is being built
Yes,
into the
yes,
building,
got it.
that nobody
Okay.
goes and destroys that value.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Perfect.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. We still have some guests.
5 minutes.
And you have another opportunity. Public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment. This time, statements are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Comments must be related to an item previously addressed by council during the meeting. Do either of you want to talk to us again?
Jim Fenimore. I would like to commend you for making a great decision on your rezoning on that property. I think it's going to be great for the city, citywide. So, good job. Also, I'm new to coming up to council up here, so I'm just not really sure. I was a little bit late because it was a little bit hard to find this down here. So in fact, I ended up at the courthouse. So, any rate, a senior moment. But under number 6, would I be able to come at that time and speak about anything that would be involving the city?
Yes.
Okay, because I got here just after that.
Yep.
I got a couple of things that I would like to recommend. I'm concerned about the North Metro area. So North Clinton is in part of that, Westminster, Federal Heights, Arvada, Broomfield. So I would like to come back at a later date.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is it too late to change my mind?
No, come on up. You get 3 full minutes.
Again, Aaron Raz.
Yeah.
Again, I understand why we're doing what we do, and it needs to happen. The only thing I would ask, and I'd be happy to be involved as I can and voice that, but just us being very responsible moving forward, especially with that wildlife. I've been involved with some cases where we're just not protecting them well. So if we're gonna rehome or move them, and involve the experts in really being responsible in doing that. And again, I've embraced change, so I'm okay with that. So again, very difficult choices you always have, and it's really wonderful to see a council work together and the synergy that I'm seeing and the respect you have for your staff here, because that's very important as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, we have a director with a final thought.
Can you run the timer?
Yeah, exactly.
I was remiss in not recognizing Ashley McFarland, who is our city planner. She put together the staff report and was the primary staff lead on putting together the application and the review, facilitating through planning commission and up to this point. So just wanted to just recognize her on the record tonight to just say that, you know, she did the yeoman's work on this. I was here to give the presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. All right, well, there being no further business, we are adjourned.
Good work,
Spare.
Because I was gonna vote no.
2 minutes. I was gonna vote no.